Good morning, everyone. Hi, my name is Lisa from Baraza Media Lab. Welcome. Before we begin, I'd like to share with you our Wi-Fi details in case you need to log in. So you can choose either between Baraza Media Lab 1 or 2, either of those networks. And the password is Karibu, Karibu, $21, all small. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning at the back with your cups of tea. We're ready to go, and I'm excited to see everyone. We are also joined by several people online. So, Honorable Ms. Maureen Bakker, the Chief Administrative Secretary, ICT, Broadcasting and Telecommunications at the Ministry of ICT, Innovation and Youth Affairs, Republic of Kenya. His Excellency Thomas Wimmer, Acting Ambassador to Kenya, the Federal Republic of Germany. Dr. Bienvenu Soglo, Director, Government Affairs Africa and IGA, the CTO Liaison at Intel Corporation. All esteemed speakers who you'll be hearing from shortly, all the hubs represented, innovators, entrepreneurs, colleagues, and friends. That was a lot. My name is Nekesa Were, Director of Strategy, and I'll be one of your hosts today. You'll soon be meeting Dr. Bienvenu, who's your other host. For anyone that's not familiar with AfriLabs, we are a Pan-African network of innovation hubs with a current membership of 347 hubs across the African continent, actually 52 African countries represented. And so at AfriLabs, we believe that a world-class African hub would nurture a world-class innovator and entrepreneur that will be capable of competing and standing out globally. And so we've made it our work to train and fund our hubs and to work with them in influencing their national innovation policies and also offering them African innovation data to aid their work. We know, like anything else that's worth doing, we can't do this alone. And so in partnership with people or organizations like Intel, with whom we've partnered to gain a deeper understanding of the African deep tech startup ecosystem and identify pathways in which Intel and AfriLabs and other members of the ecosystem can extend their support to deep tech startups on the continent, we ensure that these partnerships matter in that regard. And so this event and this partnership will amplify the voices of Kenyan and African entrepreneurs and innovators whose solutions we rely on to address critical needs across the continent. And so to all our special guests, we thank you for joining us in believing in the innovators and entrepreneurs in the room. And so it's now my honor and privilege to introduce and to welcome my co-host, Dr. Bienvenu Soglo, to give his welcome remarks. And please give him a round of applause as he comes in.
Thank you, Nekesa. Thank you very much, Nekesa. Your Excellency, Honorable Ms. Maureen Mbaka, Chief Administrative Secretary at the Ministry of ICT, Innovation and Youth Affairs, Republic of Kenya, Mr. Thomas Wimmer, Acting Ambassador to Kenya, Federal Republic of Germany, representatives of AfriLabs, both on site, Nekesa, and online, my Intel colleagues online. You have Sven online, you have Kate online, you have Raf online. By the way, they are all joining from Germany, from Munich. Ladies and gentlemen, observing all protocols, good morning. It's a great pleasure for me to provide my opening remarks at this Intel AfriLabs workshop on Intel Ignite and Intel One API for startups. Intel Corporation designs and manufactures advanced integrated digital technology platforms that power an increasingly connected world. At Intel, we have a purpose, and our purpose is to create world-changing technology that improves the life of every person on the planet. Technology has never been more important to humanity, and there is a driving need for exponential more computing, especially in an era where all the data that we currently generated, right, via this hybrid event, but also the data that are generated by retail stores, hospitals, manufacturing plants, and even cars must be moved, stored, and processed faster and more securely than ever before. Semiconductors are the underlying technology powering the digitization of everything, and this is being accelerated by what our CEO called the 4 superpowers. Number one, it is ubiquitous computing. Number two, pervasive connectivity. So when we talk about connectivity, it's the likes of the Wi-Fi we're using here now, is the likes of 4G, is the like of 5G, for example. Number three, cloud-to-edge infrastructure. And number four, artificial intelligence. Technology will play a critical role in building a digital future that is equitable, accessible, and inclusive for all. And that is why Intel launched its new RISE strategy and 2030 goals. Through this strategy, Intel strives to create a more responsible, inclusive, and sustainable future enabled through its technology and the expertise and passion of its employees. In this RISE strategy, Intel is committed to making technology fully inclusive and expanding digital readiness. This is a new concept in the context of rapid digitalization of the global economy. And in making technology fully inclusive and expanding digital readiness, Intel has rolled out the Intel Digital Readiness Program. In fact, inside this program, you have digital readiness for leaders, you have AI for youth, you have AI for future workforce, and so on and so forth. And this program aims to empower the wider non-techie audience with the appropriate digital skill set, mindset, tool set, and opportunity to use technology responsibly in the AI-forward world. Now, as part of our desire to support the African startup ecosystem, Intel is looking to learn from and harvest new technology disruptions that will help position Intel business in the African market, obviously including in Kenya, in verticals such as healthcare, fintech, agriculture, e-commerce, mobility, hardware, including the Internet of Things, that are enabled by Intel technologies, the 4 superpowers that I just talked about earlier. And it is in this regard that for us to provide more impactful support to the startup ecosystem in Africa, Intel is collaborating with AfriLabs to leverage its Pan-African reach to, number one, map and assess startups and other ecosystem stakeholders' needs. Number two, provide recommendations for future modes of collaboration that will ensure continuous deal flow. And number three, to help Intel establish a presence in the African tech ecosystem. In addition, as we're looking with AfriLabs to gain a deeper understanding of the African deep tech startup ecosystem, we can also at the same time see how the African ecosystem could already plug into our existing programs. So the 2 programs we're going to talk about today, which are Intel Ignite and Intel Ignite One API for startups. The Intel Ignite is Intel Startup Growth Program, and currently it's run from Tel Aviv, Munich, Boston, and London is going to follow. And it is an acceleration program for early stage startups with technologies in areas related to Intel. Intel Ignite One API for Startup program is targeting the global startup ecosystem. And this is a broad and scalable virtual accelerator that supports early stage startups, creating software innovation based on accelerated workloads by using Intel SPU platforms and one API. Furthermore, our collaboration with AfriLabs will enable Intel to decide which future mode of collaboration and programs will support the goal of setting up a future pipeline for our Intel Ignite and Intel Ignite One API for startups for the African deep tech startup ecosystem. So you can see, in my remarks, it's a two-way approach, but we really want to understand what is happening and we really want to hear from you. As I conclude my opening remarks, we look forward to contributing to the development of the deep tech startup ecosystem, as well as working with the entire African startup ecosystem and all the stakeholders, and we welcome your inputs, suggestions, and recommendations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, Dr. Bienvenu. We're now going into the program proper, and it's going to be in three parts. First, you will hear from a series of very interesting speakers who are members of this innovation ecosystem. And then second, as Dr. Bienvenu has said, you will hear from some of the remote team in terms of the Intel Ignite program and the One API. And you'll get an opportunity to interrogate those and to ask your questions. And then in the last part of this event, we will then open up, and we would love to hear from you. Like Dr. Bienvenu said, this is really two-way. Intel will be sharing their current experience in the deep tech space, but what we're really looking to do is get the action points from the people in this room in regard to how we're able to foster deep tech sustainably on the African continent, what you're able to do as innovators and entrepreneurs, and what you're looking for the rest of the innovation ecosystem members to do to support you. And so having said that, it's now my honor to introduce the next speaker, who represents the Association of Startup and SME Enablers of Kenya, Tim Dagori, a board member. Welcome. Round of applause as he comes over.
Honorable Chief Administrative Secretary, Minister of ICT, Your Excellency, Acting Ambassador to Kenya from the Federal Republic of Germany, distinguished guests here and online, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. So as you've heard, my name is Tim Dagori Moirori. I'm a Policy Advisor, Association of Startup and SME Enablers of Kenya, ASEC. I must admit that I'm super excited and stoked to be here amongst you. One, I'm a huge fan of sci-fi books and movies. But beyond that, I lead my organization, a member of ASEC, Technology and Society Practice across Africa. And here's where we explore the opportunities and threats of technology to the African society. In addition, I'm a member of the Transform Health Kenya Steering Committee, a consortium where we are attempting to use digital health tech to achieve universal healthcare by 2030. I'm therefore very eager to learn more about the Intel Ignite program and Intel One API for startups. Deep tech is probably society's best bet towards solving some of society's most pressing challenges. Commercialization is critical to realizing the benefits of deep tech. Commercialization is essentially the bridge between my beloved science fiction and the marketplace. From the lab to the market, as they say. So this is where ASEC, or players like ASEC, and our membership come in. So ASEC is a membership-based organization that brings together and represents the interests of entrepreneur support organizations who provide key enterprise services to Kenyan startups to scale their growth and impact. Our pillars are 5: collaboration, internationalization, capacity building, and empowerment. We have 55 members strong and growing, with a combined reach of more than 10,000. So these are startups, entrepreneurs, and innovators. Directly so far, we have supported 370 entrepreneurs who have gone on to successfully fundraise. Our partners include Kenya's Ministry of Industrialization, Trade and Enterprise Development, the EU, Embassy of Finland, GIZ, and I see some reps here, Concert Technopolis, and of course, AfriLabs, and many, many others. So I do not doubt that this partnership between Intel and AfriLabs will deliver value and impact not just Kenya, but the entire continent. We are very delighted to work with AfriLabs to convene ESOs and startups and innovators in our network. So I look forward to the conversations this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, team. It's it's now my honor to introduce our next speaker, Philip. He's a brother. Where he goes, I go. And that is why we're laughing, even as he comes forward. So if you ever see him at a convening and I'm not there, please ask him, where is Nekesa? Because this is the agreement that we have. But it's such a privilege to always have him in the room because just based off his experience, and I'm sure he'll share that with you, the words of advice and just the impact that he's had on Kenya's innovation ecosystem and now globally as he works with the Thunderbird School of Global Management is astounding, and I'm continuously amazed and proud to know, wait, let me finish, Philip Tigo, the Senior Director for Africa, Thunderbird School of Global Management. Welcome.
After you've been embarrassed like that, I don't know what I have to say anymore. Good morning, everybody. Thanks, Nekesa. Honorable Cass, Maureen Mbaka, Chief Administrative Secretary, Minister of ICT. Again, always a pleasure to bump into her into events. I have to rectify that. Honorable Your Excellency Thomas Wima, again, we bump into each other again. Pleasure to meet Dr. Soglu. We've never met before. All protocols observed. As Nekesa is really embarrassing me, let me say that when I got this invite, and I always call her, I'm a handbag, so anywhere I go, she goes. Anywhere I go, she goes. Basically it's been a long time coming, and let's be honest, that the place of Africa is not about high tech. And unfortunately, for 12 to 14 years, our innovation ecosystem has really been looking out to Silicon Valley and thinking through, we need to build high tech. But high tech in most cases is vanity technology. Whereas deep tech was where Africans really needed to be, because we have so many problems. And so we cannot be building technologies that simply are taking us to the moon. We need to build technologies that are fixing everyday issues that we have. And so every time I come into this place, this is the question I always ask. And so when Nekesa sent me this invitation, I was like, oh my God, finally. Finally, we are where we are supposed to be. Facebook has been built. That's high tech. That worked for that ecosystem. Deep tech is where we have a lot of challenges. And so how do we build our capabilities in a way that then begins to solve problems and at the same time make money? We have to make money. I'll be very honest. So I come from Thunderbird School of Global Management. We're part of Arizona State University. We are a very weird school. We have three parts of our charter. The first charter is that we are a comprehensive public research university. And so for me, I always challenge academia, because you can't talk about deep tech without leveraging research and development, of which we know startups do not have that capability. So how do we get people like us to put our research behind innovators? And we must be measured by who we include and not who we exclude, because deep tech is about inclusivity. And so we can't just build for what the market likes. We have to build for what we can solve, and at the same time ensure that the market adopts. The other piece, of course, is to advance research of public value. Public goods, I think, is where we need to land. And unfortunately, I think the previous speaker talked about health. We're in a health crisis. We're still in a pandemic. And so how do you ensure that a lot of the things that we build are, yes, solving society problems, but are solving society problems for now? You spoke about the future. I always say the future is now. The future is not tomorrow. So how are we solving for tomorrow today? And solving in a way that is more resilient. The third part of our challenge is ensuring that we're fundamentally assuming responsibility of where we are. A challenge about technology is that sometimes you build without understanding the impact of your technology. whether negative or positive, and that's where we're bringing in ethics and responsibility. And I love that you mentioned that. And so how do I ensure that the Africa tech or startup ecosystem is building responsible technology? And that is where I bring in my other hat. So I have two hats. I have a hat of Thunderbird, but also I have the hat of UNDP. With the UNDP and Thunderbird, we have a very interesting nexus. So as much as we want to build deep technology, are we building the infrastructure that supports deep tech for posterity? Touch and go is fine. The issue of responsibility is that, are you building technology that will be resilient over time? It could grow, it could morph, it could adopt, but it needs to be resilient. So 6 pieces, and I'll end with those 6 pieces. First piece, of course, is data. Can't talk about deep tech without data. Yes, we talk about data protection, but let's talk about data management. Happy to see how we can evolve that piece around data that is shareable in a way that is responsible, but then enhances the development of deep tech that is insightful and insight-driven. The second piece, of course, that I'll talk about is infrastructure. Can't talk about a lot of the deep tech companies, as you know, is both AI. AI needs to be trained on data, so do we have the data? It's about machine learning to have the data for that, but also do we have the infrastructure to do that? So internet. Nekesa and I have this conversation, and we have to hold that meeting. I have committed to convene continentally internet providers to be able to avail affordable, accessible, reliable internet, at least to startup ecosystems. I'm hearing ASEC talks about numbers. Nekesa talked about 347. Do these innovation ecosystems have internet that is available? Skills. And I know Sneha was supposed to be here, but the idea that because deep tech requires reskilling and upskilling, technology is changing and shifting. How do you ensure that we provide that ecosystem that enables you to access skills in a way that does not move you out of your development trajectory? In that case, we launched with the Ministry of ICT and the Presidency a 100 Million Learners Initiative that looks at entrepreneurship and innovation ecosystem, fully scholarshiped. I suggest you find us. It is fully scholarshiped. Take it. We come with goodies. The fourth one is energy. And this is where government comes in. It's a conversation I'm having with a couple of governments, including the US government, around affordable, sustainable energy. This ecosystem requires to be powered. We can't afford blackouts or energy that is not reliable. The fifth one is agile governance, obsessing about this. Policies cannot stifle innovation. We will move with our deep tech, and all of a sudden a law comes in and back to square one. How do we ensure that we create an ecosystem that is agile, that laws and policies are developed in a way that is consultative? You remember the ICT bill? You remember? Amnesia, this is Kenya. Just 2 weeks ago. So how do we ensure that that doesn't happen, right? And I really love that the minister, the cabinet secretary came out very strongly around that this is not how things should be done, right? We need an agile in a way that you are consulted when these regulations come in. The sixth one is sustainable finance. Money. I always ask this question. Do we have a dollar millionaire innovator in this room? Dollar millionaire? $100,000? Any innovator with that in the bank? $100,000. Going once? Going twice? Or I go higher. $500,000? This is the issue, right? It's about money. So are we creating value for you guys? Right? And so this is where also, as part of our school, we've launched a new Center for Technology Transfer that is very much focused on the Global South. So happy to see how the same way we are building companies in the US, can we help you build global, economically resilient companies? So again, happy to, you find me. We have these conversations, of course, through AfriLabs. The seventh one is partnerships, and I'll end with that. Nobody does this alone. You can't. Even the biggest ones require partnerships and collaborations. And this is why I end to congratulate Intel and AfriLabs for starting this journey of partnerships and collaboration. And you have our support, and any capability that we can bring to bear, we hope that you will ask. Because Nekesa knows, I know how to wring people's hands to provide resources. Thank you so much, and have a good deliberation.
Thank you so much, Philip. And you've heard he made lots of promises. You spoke about money, you said scholarships, you said connectivity, connections. So please do reach out to him and ensure that your needs are met. Now, our next speaker, Acting Ambassador Thomas Swimmer. I first met him when I was working with the iHub very many years ago. And I believe we were preparing to receive, was it the president? Yes, German president. And so we were working together on the logistics of making that trip happen. And I somehow landed upon his number, his phone number. And so I left iHub and lost all those contact details, the emails and so on. And when we were planning this, I say to myself, I would really love to have him in the room, but I've lost his email address or the email. I don't even know who's on his team now, so what do I do? And I looked through my phone and discovered I had his number. Now, please congratulate me for WhatsApping an ambassador. I sent him a WhatsApp message and he responded. And he said, and I said, I'm Nekesa. And he said, I know who you are. I know you're Nekesa. And I said, I left iHub, I'm now with AfriLabs. And he said, I know that you're with AfriLabs. So Thomas, I just want to thank you for being so intentional in the connections that you make, for being intentional with the ecosystem, and also for being accessible. And it's now my honor to welcome you for your remarks. Please give him a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nekesa. The Honorable CAS Maureen Mbakaba, Ministry of ICT, dear Nekesa from AfriLabs, Dr. Bienvenue and colleagues and representatives from Intel, Tim from ASEC, Philip from Thunderbird, dear Kenyan entrepreneurs and founders, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Thank you very much indeed for inviting me today. I came up with at least three reasons why I might be here. The one reason probably being, and I think you said it, Dr. Bienvenue, that Intel has run a similar program or is running a similar program already in Germany, Munich, and in Tel Aviv, and is expanding it. So that could be one of the reasons. The other reason, Nekesa, you just said it. We met when we prepared the federal president's visit to Kenya, but you were a bit humble there. You said we were preparing some logistics. That is an understatement, because that was clearly one of the highlights of the president's visit here, of the state visit. By the way, the last one before COVID hit us, that was in end of February 2020. And it's always refreshing to see when you have a delegation coming from Europe and they might expect a lot of things, but they still don't always expect to see, collaborative spaces, deep tech companies, fintechs, and so on and so forth. So that was really great to have the president and his big delegation here in Kenya, then still in Nekesa's previous incarnation as iHub, running the iHub. So that was great. Thank you very much. And the third reason why I could have a justification to be here is that Germany, since some years, 2 or 3 years, is running or is focusing in its development cooperation also on digitization in Kenya, digital economy, and digital governance. Most of that is implemented by GIZ, who are today ably represented here also by colleagues Ashlyn, Tevin, and Megan. So maybe you could just wave to everyone so that people know who you are and they can approach you later if they have any question on what I said here, if that wasn't clear. So, good morning. The tech revolution continues to redefine what is possible for you, for me, and for our societies. Technology can help us address inequalities, climate change. It can transform food production and democratize world-class education and health. And tech innovators play a central role in this revolution, and deep tech innovators even more so, of course. From where I stand, Kenya, with its Silicon Savannah, is well on the way to become a global startup superpower. The country has been on the leading edge of using digital tools to leapfrog traditional development paths. It hasn't only bypassed landline, and moved straight to mobile phones. It has adopted e-banking and mobile money at a time when traditional banking rates were still very low in the country. In the home of M-Pesa, Kenyan tech creators, many of you here in this room, are already developing some of the most exciting innovations in the world right now. And coming from Germany, I can assure you, this is a field where Kenya has a lot to offer, and Germany can learn a lot from Kenya's innovative strength as well. If you've ever been looking for partnership on an equal footing, this is where you can truly find it. However, for Kenya to become a startup superpower and harness the power of tech for good, it needs a healthy innovation ecosystem that enables the best ideas to grow to scale, and we've heard a bit about that already. Supporting digital entrepreneurship and tech startups in Kenya therefore means bringing down barriers through the entire ecosystem, including those related to connectivity, payment systems, data protection, financial inclusion, and logistics. This is why entrepreneurs and female founders need comprehensive support structures that provide them with capacity building, affordable credit, and facilitated access to new markets. As the German government, our goal is to, jointly with our Kenyan partners, make the Kenyan digital innovation ecosystem future-ready and build up the necessary support structures for it to thrive. How do we do this? German Development Corporation has partnered with key ecosystem support structures like ASEC, which we want to strengthen in their service delivery to tech entrepreneurs and female founders. Through our Digital Transformation Center Kenya, implemented by GIZ, as I said, we assist them in expanding their networks to investors, accompany startups throughout their innovation cycle, and provide innovators with digital skills training. We've also partnered with AfriLabs to explore how the organization, as one of the most important conveners of the African digital innovation ecosystem, can collaborate with national ecosystem support structures here in Kenya. As Intel is showcasing today, and as we all know from our own corporations with, for example, SAP, DHL, and Bosch, the private sector plays a vital role in strengthening innovations ecosystems as investors, innovators, and skills developers. There are plenty of opportunities for Kenyan and European companies to work together. Companies in Europe might have the technology, some of them might also have experience working in Africa, but partnering with an African enterprise will for sure make them more trusted and embedded in the local ecosystem. That's why we have set up the so-called Make IT Alliance, which is a network of European companies with a common goal of supporting the development of innovation ecosystems in Germany's partner countries such as Kenya. At the same time, the Make IT Alliance members have the opportunity to discover local markets, so it's really a win-win. Dear developers, dear tech creators, innovation, digitization, and connectivity characterize the global fourth industrial revolution and are key drivers for long-term competitiveness in line with sustainable growth. It offers the opportunity for an improved and more qualified cooperation between Africa and Europe. To strengthen digital innovation networks in Africa and promote intercontinental dialogue between African and European innovators, Germany, together with other EU member states and with the support of the European Commission, has set up a network of partnerships between African and European actors. It is called the African-European Digital Innovation Bridge. The idea behind this bridge is to encourage joint ventures between Africa and Europe to foster technical innovation and experimentation for small and mid-sized enterprises and startups. I'm very pleased to say that AfriLabs has been a strategic partner in the development of the design and implementation of the network. Moreover, through our Digital Transformation Center here in Kenya, we are actively working on further expanding the network by supporting existing ecosystem support structures in becoming digital innovation hubs and therefore part of the intercontinental exchange. Ladies and gentlemen, Kenya's tech ecosystem is at a critical point. Significant funding growth coupled with an explosion of ideas from the country's major tech hubs point to an exciting decade ahead. Increasing Kenya's capacity to create technology will be vital in accelerating its ability to shape its digital future. So if I had to summarize my message today in one tweet, it would probably be the following. Kenya is a country of entrepreneurs, and Germany stands ready to support her way towards a global startup superpower. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Thomas. And Philip says you didn't do that well. You should have also shared the hashtag. Yeah. Great. We are about to come to a close of this very first session, and I'm glad that we're able to end it on a high with our next speaker, the Chief Administrative Secretary in the Ministry of ICT. I think what I'm most grateful for having Ms. Maureen here today is, again, just the accessibility. I don't know any other people in this room, if you've tried to get government representation at your event and you're moved from one place to another, and then if we're being honest, today's all about honest conversations. And sometimes it doesn't quite work out. But this is not the first time that we have invited the Chief Administrative Secretary to be part of an event. I think this is maybe our second or third interaction, maybe not with AfriLabs, but with other entities. And it's always been such a seamless process. And so I'm very grateful for you and for your team, some of who are in the room, just for that accessibility. But I'm also grateful for how intentional you are in wanting to understand the issues, right? And so it's not just to have a figurehead in the room, but it's to be able to understand the space in which you're in and what the issues are and what it is that we want to deliberate about. And so I'm really grateful to have you in the room, and please join me in welcoming Honorable Ms. Maureen Mbaka, the Chief Administrative Secretary at the Ministry of ICT, Innovation and Youth Affairs, Republic of Kenya. Please give her a round of applause.
Thank you. Excellency Thomas Wimmer, Acting Ambassador to Kenya, Federal Republic of Germany, Madam Nekesa Were, Dr. Bienvenue Soglo, Tim Dagori, Board Member ASEC, you said ASEC, Mr. Thigo, Senior Director for Africa, Thunderbird School of Global Management, invited guests, innovators in the room, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm pleased to join you all today for this workshop that will go a long way in helping to engage with local startup ecosystems, to understand their interests, their needs, and desires, and to understand what other ecosystem members are already doing in the space that will help sustainably advance deep tech in Kenya. Receive warm regards from my Cabinet Secretary, the Honorable Joe Musheru, who would have loved to be here, but sent his regards and me to represent him. I would like to congratulate AfriLabs and Intel on their partnership to gain a deeper understanding of the African deep tech startup ecosystem and identify pathways in which Intel can extend their support to deep tech startups on the continent. According to the World Bank, deep tech companies bring transformative technology from the lab to the market, in addition to democratized research infrastructure. Increased available funding has led to the rise of deep tech companies globally, including in emerging markets. And Africa, Kenya to be specific, should follow suit. I'm happy to learn that Intel Ignite helps turn cutting-edge ideas into industry-disrupting technologies by giving ambitious entrepreneurs hands-on mentorship, technical support, and business acumen they need to build world-changing companies. This is in line with the 5 pillars that Kenya has earmarked in our digital economy blueprint, such as digital government, digital business, infrastructure, innovation-driven entrepreneurship, digital skills, and values. Ladies and gentlemen, the government of Kenya, in its Vision 2030 blueprint, recognizes the importance of technology and innovation in its endeavor to have a knowledge-based economy. In the process of accelerating the transition to an innovation-led and knowledge-based economy, the government initiated several projects under science, technology, and innovation sector. These initiatives include facilitating the development of a highly skilled human resource base that would sustainably support and trigger innovation in priority areas. Additionally, the government will ensure that all sectors have access to new technologies in order to increase productivity and efficiency. Further, the government has in place the Digital Economy Master Plan in its quest towards realization of a successful and sustainable digital economy. The aim is to connect every Kenyan and every government entity, such as hospitals, schools, police stations, regardless of the geographical location. To support this, the government established a universal service fund with the sole purpose of supporting widespread access to ICT services and to promote capacity building and innovation in ICT services. So far, this fund has supported projects in the security sector, in the health sector, and supported connectivity to remote areas. USF has been very impactful by ensuring availability and accessibility of ICTs in rural, remote, and other urban areas. The digital learning program, I heard about Mr. Thigo spoke on skills, has been established with the aim to improve learning and building 21st century skills among primary school students through the use of digital technologies in education. This program has exposed young learners to friendly tech and increased early adoption, increased creativity and innovation due to early exposure to technological concepts. Kenya's robust ICT infrastructure and systems has effectively presented a dynamic nature of the cyber threat landscape. The adoption of new and emerging tech such as AI, robotics, 5G networks, big data, and blockchain have great potential for impact on economic development. This adoption has also brought about new challenges that require new strategies to address them and protect Kenya's cybersecurity interests. The government recognizes that data governance is not only important to protect the population, but is central to economic success and social cohesion. The enactment of the Data Protection Act has led to considerable strides in enabling the proper use of data. Good data governance for the implementation of digital government will address issues of data sharing, access to good data, and building of an integrated and connected government. Of course, when we speak of cybersecurity, we also have in place our Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act that creates offenses around cybercrime to enable faster prosecution, identifying and prosecution of crimes around this area. On connectivity, the government has continued to guide the ICT sector, ensuring Kenya gains global recognition for innovation and increased ICT infrastructure through expansion of our national optic fiber backbone infrastructure that now covers almost every part of the country. The government has laid down over 9,000 kilometers of NOFB, we call it NOFB, across all 47 counties, and statistics do show that in Kenya, more than 85% of Kenyans have access to the internet. In line with this, the government has also invested in ensuring Kenya has infrastructure that will enable government institutions and private sector to comply with data protection provisions. And one of these key investments includes our Konza National Data Center that has been hailed as a state-of-the-art facility, which is highly secure and a reliable Tier 3 design and construction facility with multiple internet connectivity and reliable power supply. Kenya has also invested in the marine sea cables in a bid to grow digital infrastructure capacity of the nation. As a ministry, and seeing that as I'm in the room with innovators, we continue to implement various programs aimed at creating an enabling environment to promote the culture of innovation in the country. And key among them is the Huduma White Box program, a government initiative designed as a one-stop shop for anyone who wants to present, share their idea, innovation, invention, or solution. Through our website, whitebox.go.ke, Kenyans can forward their innovations and ideas for promotion and support upon evaluation of viability. The program evaluates innovations and provides linkage to markets, marketing expertise, access to legal guidance, a linkage to research institutions and universities, as well as to innovation hubs and centers. The White Box website also has an e-learning portal that provides self-paced modules on business modeling, pitching, validation, marketing, and sales. Ladies and gentlemen, the government's commitment to grow Kenya's profile as the East Africa Technology Hub also underscores the role of tech in the transformation of public sector services, processes, and management. This partnership, where Intel and AfriLabs intend to work with local ecosystem leaders to bridge skill commercialization and funding gaps, as well as any other emerging issues, is a step in the right direction, and we look forward to seeing the gains made from this partnership. With that, I wish you all the very best in your presentations and plenary discussions that are geared towards offering support to the African deep tech startup ecosystem. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Madam Chief Administrative Secretary. Let's please give all the speakers a round of applause. We've now come to the end of that first session, but before we move into the next, I just wanted to recognize the presence of a few people in the room. Protas Shitero and John Krigsman from the US Embassy are in the room. Please give them a round of applause. Barack Otieno from Kick2Net, which is a multi-stakeholder think tank in the ICT space, is in the room. Please give him a round of applause. And Mr. John Kamara, a seasoned entrepreneur and the founder of Adanian Labs, which is an AI and smart tech lab, is in the house. Please give him a round of applause. And John, I should mention that you came up yesterday. We're having a round table with investors at Serena yesterday with Intel, and we were discussing case studies or people within the ecosystem who are doing amazing stuff in the deep tech space. And some of the investors mentioned your work. And I was extremely proud to say that they could meet you today, and I hope they come in. But your reputation precedes you, so congratulations. We're now about to move to some virtual presentations on Intel Ignite and Intel One API. But before we do, I'll ask the speakers to please come to the front for a series of photos. And then after that, in about 2 minutes, we'll then move on to the next session. In the meantime, you're welcome to continue taking teas and so on, and then settle back down for the next session. Thank you. Hello? Hello, please, let's take our seats.
I'd like to catch you when you have some time.
Okay. Okay. Sorry? All right, we're now ready to go into the next session. If you'll take your seats, please. May I have your attention, please? I'm glad that everyone is having great conversations. I can see you're done with the taking tea, so I'll ask that you take your seats so we can move on to the next session. All the guests at the back, please take your seats so we can move on to the next session. Thank you. We're now going to get into the Intel Ignite and the One API session. This will be guided by our colleagues from Intel, Dr. Bienvenu, Kate, and Ralph. And so, Dr. Bienvenu, I'll hand this over to you now.
Great, thank you very much, Nekesa. Good morning again, everyone. We really appreciate you taking time, being here with us today. So our presentation this morning, I believe it's still in the morning, right? So it's to talk about our Intel Ignite and Intel Ignite One API for Startup programs. And I have two of my colleagues online. Kate, she's the head of program at Intel Ignite Accelerator. She's based in Munich, in Germany. I also have my colleague Raf, who is the director of Intel One API for Startup Programs. And, well, they'll have the opportunity to introduce themselves and then, go through different presentation. But before that, here is the outline of the presentation, just to guide a little bit our discussions. And I would like to give a brief introduction to Intel. Again, even though, we can see the logo on the laptops, but Intel is much more than that. So I want to talk a little bit about that. Then after that, then we have Kate that will take the floor to talk about Intel Ignite. And then we have Raf that will take the floor to talk about Intel Ignite One API for Startups. And then after that, then we will share what we're trying to actually work on, the collaboration we're having with AfriLabs, what we're trying to do, how far we have gone. And, we want your input. And as I said earlier, that's why we are here. We want to understand from ground up where are the areas where we can work together. We have these programs, yes, well, in Tel Aviv, in Israel, in Munich, in Germany, but the environment is slightly different, okay? So, well, in terms of introduction to Intel, as you all know, we are headquartered in Santa Clara, in California, right? We have more than 120,000 employees worldwide. We are present in 53 countries around the world, including in Africa and in Kenya. And then Susan is here. She's our general manager for East Africa for Intel. And as you know, we said earlier, at Intel we have a purpose, and our purpose is to create world-changing technology that improves the lives of every person on the planet. And you know, Intel, the company, we were created 54 years ago. In fact, on 18th of July, of this month, we turned 54. And the technology that we created are changing people's lives. But as we've seen with COVID, right, technology is becoming more important. Even so, now, right, technology is helping us to have people to join us virtually to listen to, you know, this presentation and this workshop. We have digitization of everything, right? Whether it is in the area of healthcare, agriculture, fintech, and so on and so forth. And semiconductor, they are at the heart, right, of the digitization of the infrastructure that is needed. And all of this has been accelerated by what our CEO, Pat Gelsinger, called the 4 superpowers. Right. So 4 superpowers, as you can see here, they're absolutely related to the deep tech discussion that we're actually having here. So the first one is ubiquitous compute. The second one is pervasive connectivity. We say pervasive, which means that you get connected everywhere you are, right? And that is very critical. We do not necessarily have that yet, especially on the African continent. It's a challenge, but that is also a huge opportunity for us. Number 3, we have the cloud to edge infrastructure. And number 4, we have artificial intelligence. Those are the 4 superpowers. And so in order for Intel to transform from a PC-centric company, right, where we see our logo, Intel inside and so on, to address the need, you know, to move data, you know, everywhere, we have reorganized ourselves into 6 business units. And in fact, this is what I wanted to present, just for you to see actually what are the different areas where our technologies are actually used. Right. The first one, you see, client computing. That's where you have the PCs, right, that you use for you to connect, for you to, you know, have access to education and so on. Second business unit, data center and AI. So you have our Xeon processors that are used in the data centers that are built, that are used, but also we have our technology in the AI space as well. Second business unit. Third business unit, you have the network and edge. So network and edge, that's where you talk about the telecommunication networks, whether it's the 4G, whether it's the 5G, whether it's the next generation of mobile technology that has been discussed now, whether it's Wi-Fi 6E and so on. So that's that business unit. Number 4, you have the accelerated computing system and graphics, right? The GPUs and so on and so forth. And number 5, if you go to Munich or you go to Paris and you see automated vehicles that are actually moving around, and it is Mobileye or Move It, know that it is an Intel company, it's an Intel technology that is used there. And so that is also another business unit for us. And then finally, business unit 6, our Intel Foundry Services. So Intel is one of the very few companies that actually design the technology, the processes, but also produce them. And so we created a new business unit called Intel Foundry Services, whereby we will continue to produce our design there, but we'll open it for our partners, but also we will open it for our competitors, all right? Because we wanted, you know, to become the second foundry company by the end of the decade. So that is the information I wanted to share as a background. And with that, I will turn it over to Kate. She's joining us virtually from Munich. Kate, good morning, and please take it away. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, bienvenue. Can you hear me well? Yes? Okay. I will be sharing my own screen. Can you see that? Yes. Okay, good morning, everyone. Yeah, I must say, firstly, this is the most how can I say it? It's a wonderful hybrid experience for me. I don't think I've ever been in a hybrid workshop where I've been able to see the room and experience the room so clearly as today. So it feels like I'm actually sitting next to you having tea with you. So that really big compliments on your setup. Good morning, everyone. I'm Kate Hach. I head the program at Intel Ignite Europe. And I've been in the entrepreneurship support space for a long time. I started out at the Entrepreneurship Center of the Technical University in Munich, and then I moved on to the German Development Agency, GIZ, and advised the African Union on setting up entrepreneurship programs. And then I made my way into corporate accelerators, first at SAP and now at Intel. And I'm saying this because, interestingly, Nekesa and my paths have crossed every single time. Through every different station I've been at, I've always found Nekesa again and worked with Nekesa again. So I'm looking forward to the future because Nekesa and I somehow, I think we will continue working with each other. Now to Intel Ignite. What is Intel Ignite? It is the acceleration program that Intel has started for deep tech startups, first in Tel Aviv and then in Munich. Tel Aviv serves the Israeli ecosystem and Munich currently the European ecosystem. Although we do belong to EMEA, which means that there is Africa in the abbreviation. And I'd love to see African startups applying for the program in future. Just to give you an idea on a very high level of what Ignite has achieved so far. So we evaluate a lot of startups coming in through recommendations, often via VCs, so venture capitalists who have looked at these startups and deemed them fundable or have already invested in them and say they need some help, they need some work. Please invite them to your program, and then we screen them and we choose 10 for each batch. So it is hard to get into. Our GM likes to say it's easier to get into Harvard than to Ignite, but don't let that deter you. The startups have raised $1 billion to date. Their funding growth is important to us, so we focus very heavily during the program on getting the startups to raise the next round, on helping them to find funds, helping them to find VCs, helping them to improve their pitches, improve their business model, and just generally improve their company building skills so that they can reach that next funding round and succeed. What else? So far, we've accelerated 88 startups across the 2 locations that are currently up and running, so Tel Aviv and Munich. And in future, we will also have Boston and London coming in next year. These are the startups that we have already accelerated. And as you can see there, we've categorized them according to their technology clusters and not according to industries, because we are industry agnostic. It doesn't matter to us whether the startups are in healthcare, in health tech, or in robotics, or in green tech. We really don't. We don't matter. We don't. For us, it's not important what industry they're in. For us, the tech stack is important. So we do both hardware and software, and there are very few accelerators out there that actually dare to do hardware. We do. Some examples in Munich, we had a startup last batch called Lydrotech, which does wafer dicing. That means that they cut chips out of a round silicon wafer. What else? Stex is a startup of ours that does Web3 solutions, so IoT connectivity, and at the moment their use cases are in the smart city field, but could be potentially in any field. Felix will be replacing your forklifts. One day there will be no forklifts left. There will just be Felix robots riding under every pallet and moving them in fleets. So yeah, as you can see, very different industries represented here. in the different tech stacks that are interesting to Intel. So the definitely the semiconductor sector, but we also look at AI, security, cloud security, data security, and next generation compute. As Bienvenue also mentioned, high performance computing is a field that we're slowly getting more and more into. So quantum computing as well. Okay, this is just to show you how we get startups into our program. So usually they are recommended, as I said, and most of the startups, because they're recommended by investors, they're usually in the post-seed phase. So they're early stage startups, but they have acquired a first round of funding. We like to say that we would like them to have already acquired roughly $1 million, but I think that context matters. So it depends on the tech, what the tech requirements are, what the startup requirements are, and what other funds have also been acquired, be it grants or funds from maybe family and friends. And this is just to show that we usually get around 200 to 250 applications per batch, and then we choose 10 for each batch that take place twice a year. And now, how does Ignite work? So Ignite is a 12-week acceleration program where we focus on 3 levels of learning. We focus on the corporate level, so the Intel level. We provide mentoring so that startups can actually learn about Intel and how to work with Intel and gain insights from Intel on their tech or on their on the market, without having to go through the very difficult access points that usually exist if you want to work with a corporate. So finding the right person in a company with 120,000 employees is very hard. And so that's what we accelerate during 12 weeks. The ecosystem we provide access to, so all our speakers and mentors are experienced entrepreneurs. They're not service providers. And then the founders that are within the batch together, and also the alumni, provide another source of expertise for each startup participating. So we go into the first level, the corporate level. What we do with the teams is we work as a team. There are 4 of us. We work very intensively with each startup for the duration of the 12 weeks. We turn over every stone in the company. We have a look at every area, and we do that together with the founders. So this is a founder-led program, and it's 4 founders by founders. Our Ignite team consists of entrepreneurs, and we work with the CEO, CTO, and all the other CXOs to make sure that they have the leadership skills and the expertise to be able to scale their company. And as just mentioned, we provide a lead mentor to every single startup team who helps the startup navigate the company. And they bring in additional experts who provide more access to the company and more expertise. So as a startup runs through the program, they usually have contact with probably around 10 to 20 high-level Intel experts who help them in their respective fields. The mentors and speakers are people who have actually walked the walk. So they are people who want to give back to the startup community because they themselves have founded companies successfully and unsuccessfully. Failures are equally good to learn from, and they provide their input on whichever field that they have learned the most in. So it can be fundraising, can be marketing, sales, tech, and they also give additional time for one-on-ones with each startup. And then VC is very important to be able to survive. You need your next round. So we make it one of our key objectives to get each startup in touch with the VCs that are active in their field, in their market, and make sure that we get them warm introductions and that we prepare them well so that they are ready for fundraising when they leave the program. Here's just an example of a fruitful relationship between one of our speakers and one of our startups. So Olivier Bonnet is the CTO of BlaBlaCar, a mobility platform that was started in France and is now active across Europe. And Henrik Kramer is the CEO of Fernride. Fernride does teleoperated trucking. So when you think about truck drivers, there's a huge shortage of truck drivers here in Europe. And at the moment, what Fernride is working on is getting offshore drivers to be able to drive multiple trucks at a time, so that that problem is solved. And through their interaction of holding a workshop together, because we always involve each startup in every workshop as a co-host, Olivier Bonnet became very interested in Fernride and became their angel investor in the next fundraising round. Okay, and then finally, the top level that I was talking about, the actual startups themselves, because they're all in the same boat, right? They're all early stage, they're all deep tech, they're all looking for funding, they're all looking for talent, they're all trying to acquire customers. They all are very good sources of information for each other. So just an example is in this current batch that we've just finished working with, there were 3 deep tech startups that said, 3 hardware startups, sorry, that said, you know, it's so hard to find hardware VCs. So they pooled their resources and they've created a large database of all the hardware VCs that they know, so that they can each reach out to them. So often that peer-to-peer learning is very valuable for the startups. Here are just some impressions of the batch that we've just had. This is to show, so we do most of the batch online, but we do try and meet up 3 times in every batch. So throughout the 12 weeks, we meet in the first week, the middle week, and the last week. And this was the first week. Everyone came to the mountains in southern Germany from all over Europe, and we did our first round of workshops and mentoring there. And then this is in our midterm week. We met again. That time we met in Munich in our offices. These are our offices at the top. And we also did a pitching clinic on a rooftop, because pitching is really core to the program. We make sure that we work on each and every startup's pitch very, very many times. We take them apart throughout the 12 weeks, and then we put them back together again. And at the end, I must say that they have enormously improved in comparison to the first week. So yeah, that is how we work. This is just some numbers on this current batch 3 that we've been working with, just to make it clearer of what happens. So we had 43 sessions throughout 12 weeks with 31 different speakers. We had 82 one-on-one sessions, so where one expert talks to one group of founders. We reviewed 72 pitches, so with 10 startups. Each startup had roughly 7 sessions on their pitches, which is a lot. 700 hours of mentoring went into the 10 startups, and we're now working on 206 investor matches that they have requested. Let's see how many of those become fruitful, but that also shows how much work needs to go into a successful investor match. Yeah, and last but not least, this date here at the end, the 11th of October 2022, is when we will be selecting for our next batch 4. So if you reach out and apply, if you're in deep tech, if you would like to work with Intel because you feel that Intel can provide value from our expert sides, then please reach out. And now I'll be very happy to hear any questions that you have.
Are there any questions from the room on Intel Ignite? Yep. Do you have a mic in your? At the back, the lady there, her name is Lena. She's my colleague. If you need anything from me and can't find me, I promise you can get it from her. There's a hand up just now. Yeah, it is, Lena.
Hi. Hi. My name is Kevin.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Kate. Okay.
Hello.
Okay, good. So my name is Kevin from Matrix Blackbox. Thank you for your session on taking us through Intel Ignite. I just have a few questions, about 3 of them. I think it's okay to ask them. You can answer them in whatever order you like. Thank you. So, first question. Is it possible for Intel to make IoT level microchips with startups? Is it something that you guys offer? Is it something that you can do with startups here in terms of ground up building microchips, if one is interested in that? Number 2, in case one is interested in modifying an existing product, say, for example, a computer or, say, a laptop, since that's your field, or a server, and would like to do a custom type server that has specific type of a chip or a specific type of an architecture that does not exist yet, is it something that Intel can do to provide in the accelerator? Number 3, should one get through the accelerator or get into the accelerator, do you provide a guideline journey to show the various stages that the startup will go through from start to end, so that they are aware of what they're going to go through and at the end what they're going to get out of it? And sorry, I'm going to add one last 4th question. Is it possible for Intel to set up a foundry in Kenya, should one choose to have that in their startup portfolio? Thank you.
Sorry, Kevin, I didn't get the last question. Could you repeat that?
Can Intel assist in building a foundry ground up in Kenya specifically to manufacture semiconductor chips, should a startup want that in their portfolio? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your questions, Kevin. So I'll start with the last one. I think that's a great idea. I must say that probably I have little to no influence on whether Intel will build up a foundry in Kenya. I can just give you some background. A foundry has just been decided on for Germany, and we got to know it at the same time as the media got to know it. So there was a lot of speculation before. Where is it going to be? Will it happen? What is the fundraising amount? So, I mean, I think that's a great idea, but it's not something, unfortunately, that I could influence in any way. It's something to move up the ranks, and it's probably something that you could talk to Bienvenue about. On your questions on the accelerator, so what do startups get out? The startups come in usually with a first round of funding, and what we want them to do is to go out and be able to acquire a serious Series A round. So really to be able to scale, to be able to get their product to market, and we prepare them very clearly for that. So that you look at startups that come in with about 10 to 30 employees, and when they leave, then they are on track to be setting up their company for about 100 employees within the next 12 months. Usually, we really look at every single field of the startup. So really, the actual tech. What is the product that is being built? How can the tech be improved? How can the product be improved? But we also look at areas such as how to build up your marketing and sales funnel, how to set up processes for sales. We look at how to improve in people, so how to set up processes and structures for HR so that you can actually scale at that level. What else? Yeah, and we focus a lot on the leadership of the leadership skills of the founders. So the actual founders need to scale their own leadership skills so that they can scale the company at the same time, because many are first-time founders, not all, but many have never been in this position of founding and leading and growing a company. So that's what we focus on, but I'm happy to give you more information if you apply. On your technical questions, those are really interesting, and that would be something where I would invite you to, provide information from your side. What do you do within your startup? And where could Intel help you further? That would be something then that our technical team would work on. It really depends on how far you are and where we could provide value. Do we have the experts who would be able to work with you on this? And if that is the case, and you get through to Intel Ignite, then that could definitely be an idea to work with you on these two ideas. So yeah, please provide me with more information. Reach out, send me your pitch deck, send me your website, and then we can see what the next steps are.
Thank you very much, Kate, and thank you very much for your questions, great questions. As Kate said, yes, some of those decisions sometimes, that's what happens. But what I want to say is that what we're trying to do today is to share with you some of the programs that we already have now, and then the but is that, well, we understand these programs are running in Munich, they are running in Israel. We understand that there are gaps, right? How do we identify those gaps? And that is why actually we currently working with AfriLabs to conduct a study to understand the deep tech startup ecosystem. So it's currently ongoing, right? And so based on the study, we'll see where the gaps are. They'll tell us, AfriLabs, but also you, because that's why we're engaging with you. You tell us, okay, these are the gaps. This is what you think you could do in Africa in order, to be involved in the startup ecosystem. Now, at the same time that you are doing that, if it happens that we have startups that are interested in, Intel Ignite, or in the next presentation that is going to be done, then that's great, right? Then, we move along. So that's number one. Number two, in terms of your question about how do you customize, some of the maybe servers, maybe computers, and so on, as Kate said, that is one avenue that, you reach out to her and provide a bit more information to see how we could actually potentially help. But the other aspect that we're also trying to work on is to kind of work specifically with specific startups to see how we could potentially get some call for proposal. Voluntary, no promise, but at least get a call for proposal to understand what they're trying to do, and potentially internally we can see how we can help, because that way we'll have a bit more information, in a proper format that can help us. So I hope that we were able to answer your questions. If not, we can continue the conversation after the workshop. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bienvenu. Any other questions for Kate before? Okay, great. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Nekesa, AfriLabs, Intel, for organizing this. And so my question to Kate is, first, my name is Tembe Karuki. I'm co-founder of a startup called Fastager. And so we're building a Web3 platform to help SMEs to increase their sales and customer engagement. And we are doing this using blockchain and artificial intelligence. And so our main mission has always been to democratize AI. And one of the major parts of AI and why we feel like Africa is going to end up missing out on that is the training data that actually was mentioned. So one of our biggest challenges has been whenever we go out to raise money or to talk to different people and saying that, hey, we need to actually get this data, label it for, this supervised learning for machine learning is, we always get the pushback that, that's not something to invest in right now because Africa has other problems. So my question to Intel is, one, is there's a lot of private personal identifiable data that needs to be worked on the continent, and so there's not a lot of high performance computing. So is there any focus on actually working with data centers to have those chips that can do high performance computing in country? So even if we were a startup working with Intel or hopefully gets into the Intel program, that we can actually run our models in country to work on this kind of data, because that's a challenge. That would be a challenge for some of us. One, is there any potential for investments to collect and label this training data on the continent in countries? So that's another area where of a question. And then the other side is, do you have any Africa-focused VCs? Because one of the big challenges within deep tech is that there are not a lot of VCs, global VCs, that have an interest. The likes of Sequoia and the rest, Accel, the people who can give $1 million plus. Because if you're doing deep tech, probably your pre-seed is $1 million or $2 million or $3 million, and we don't have that happening on the continent. So what is your view of, do you actually have like a database of those kind of investors? So if a startup from Africa gets into the program, they can be, placed in front of those investors to do those Series A's of 10 million, 20 million plus, so that the startups can scale.
Thank you for those questions. Those are very good questions. As I said earlier, investment is really a key issue for us. So any startup that gets into the program, we have a look very clearly at what their investment needs are and also their geographical needs. So we're as Bienvenue mentioned earlier, we are busy exploring the potential of understanding the African deep tech startup ecosystem. And Intel Ignite exists in Europe, and we have therefore a very European-focused ecosystem, but we're interested in understanding the networks that work within Africa and that support deep tech. And so actually, yesterday, Bienvenue and Nekesa hosted a VC round to understand, the fundraising potential and the needs and the gaps for African deep tech startups. And it's the way at Ignite, the way we go about it is we constantly grow our VC network. So whenever a startup comes into the batch, we assess, okay, what are their needs, and do we already have them met within our network, or do we need to go out and find new investors? So, every single batch, we find new investors because we realize, okay, there is a quantum computing startup, or there is a startup that is active in let's say in the robotics space, but they don't need German investors, they need more US focused investors. Or this batch, for the first time we had a healthcare startup, so we had to expand our network in that direction. So that would be definitely a huge AR for us. If you make it into the program, we would have a look at, okay, what are the investors you would have to speak to, and we make sure that we get in touch with them. And we do that also because we know that it's easier for someone at Intel with an email address that says @intel.com than as opposed to at startup that is not yet known, to reach out to these investors. So we provide that avenue because we know that we can provide credibility and we can show, we have very successful startups in our batch. It's worth it to reach out to these startups and to have a meeting with them. And usually that's what we manage. So definitely that would be a huge to-do for us if you're on the program. Your first question on running models on Intel chips, that is something we could also look at within the program. So as the first speaker asked, really reach out, send me your information, and let's have a discussion.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kate. And by the way, yesterday you were also a co-host of the VC Roundtable because you were co-moderator with Nekesa as well. And so, in fact, your question about the venture capitalist investment in the deep tech, that's something we wanted to find out, and that's why yesterday we had the roundtable to discuss with them to understand what are the challenges, what could be done, and then how maybe Intel could support whichever way. And so the discussion is ongoing from that perspective. Now, the second aspect where you mentioned about, access to data, access to the infrastructure, and I think that is a very key important aspect. I just want to provide some information in terms of some of the effort in which we have been involved from the African perspective. For example, you have the Pan-African AI Blueprint, right, that have been developed by Span Africa. We've been involved in the work of the working group in supporting, the content and the different aspects. I think it's a really great document that if you have time, you can have a look at. But what I want to mention there, in the blueprint, it did talk about the need to have computing power. Right, because if you don't have the infrastructure, where do you host the data and then all what you're going to run and so on and so forth, that is required. And, you will see in the document that there are, countries, and I believe in Kenya as well, you have data centers and so on. But for example, in South Africa, where I stay, you have, centers of high power computing and so on and so forth. And the advice that was in the blueprint was to say, okay, how can you look at those different infrastructure that you have in the different region and maybe mutualize, right, those computing power to be able to enable, right, the AI use cases and so on. But particularly in the country, I believe perhaps might be worthwhile to have a conversation with the different players, whether it is from the infrastructure perspective, also in terms of access to data, right? Because you have to look, are you getting the right data, right? Is it personalized data? Is it sensitive data? And so on and so forth. How do you get access to those and then try and start to see how do you overcome those challenges? So that's what I have to ask. I don't know if you have any additional questions.
Do you have any particular grants, for example, for GPUs or such?
Okay. So great question here. I'm not going to talk about grant, but it means that it's time for our second speaker to talk about Intel One API for startup. Maybe that will give you a little bit more.
Yeah, but also in the part of for investment. So for example, we were actually the only startup that got into like the Berlin Science Week, and one of the things that was happening there is that we talked to VCs there, and they were saying that, okay, even though you're doing amazing work, but we only have a European focus. So it would be interesting also maybe later on to find out, who are in that investor roundtable, so we could approach them as well.
Yes, great. And I think this is a great input from you. That's what we're trying to find out yesterday. We're working on the study, and then we're hoping that the recommendations that are going to come out of the study that we're conducting, it's been several weeks now, that will provide us an idea of what we need to do. So we understand we do not have all the answers, and in fact, maybe we don't have any answer because we don't actually know what are the challenges yet. So we want to find out what those challenges are, and then based on that, the recommendation, then we'll be able to say, okay, we're going to do this, we can do this, maybe we need to work with you or other partners.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll have Ralph take over.
Hi, I'm Nika Bed. I'm an AI engineer. So my question is pretty simple. As I've heard from Intel, Ignite is about products focused. Let's say if a startup is more focused on research, do they still invest in such a startup? I mean, yeah, so like a lab, I've heard about quantum computing, but it's this creation of a lab and there's the research inside, like algorithms. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. I think it's a very important aspect as we're talking about the TIC space. There's another Vision program that you're currently working on. Well, not yet, completely finalized, but what we're looking at is to see how we can use emerging technologies to solve African challenges, right? To do that, obviously, you have to work with professors at the universities, right? Or you have to work with research institutions, right? And so to see whether you need to get researchers or master's students and PhD students to have a specific topic over a certain number of years, obviously, and then for sure, as let's say the PhD student is doing the research, if it is towards a specific challenge, it is clear along the way he's been discovering, right? He's been, finding some insight and so on and so forth. And towards the end, that researcher will be able either to go from the research to the market or to be able to, help in supporting this ecosystem. So that's something we're working on. We haven't gotten something specific yet to say this is what we're going to do, but I'll say stay tuned, and then we look forward to getting your contact, and then we can see how we can work from there. Thank you.
Awesome. Ralph, I think we're now ready for you.
All right. Thank you very much. Yeah, my name is Ralph Devarny. I'm going to share my screen, actually. Can you see something? Hello?
Yes, I can see it, Ralph.
So you see my screen with the presentation, right?
Yes, yes, you see it.
Yeah. So yeah, my name is Ralph Devarny. I work in the software area of Intel for a long time already. So I've never touched any hardware, but always working in software, which includes, I worked in HPC, high performance computing, in AI, and other applications of software. And Intel provides a lot of resources to software developers. For instance, a lot of software development tools and best practices, and so on. So we are also a big software company, right? You had a presentation earlier today about what Intel does, but Intel also is a very large software company, and we have about 15,000 software developers within the company. So today my presentation is about Intel One API for startups. It's basically, you can imagine this as an extension to Ignite. While Ignite is a very high-level program providing incredible benefits for a very few startups, the One API for Startups program is an extension which is virtual, so there is no location. It's global. Wherever you are in the world, you can participate to the One API for Startups program. You can apply for membership, and when you are a member, you can get a lot of benefits, which I will present to you in a minute, without having to go into a certain location or without having to go into a batch for a certain amount of time. So we started this program beginning of this year, so it's pretty young program. It's basically a platform, right? Instead of being an accelerator, it's a platform, and we provide a lot of benefit and capabilities to founders in what we call accelerated computing. That means any application, any software application that needs some kind of performance, which includes AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning, analytics, high performance computing, also called simulation, right? Graphics, any application around graphics, metaverse, big things ahead with metaverse, but also blockchain and anything that requires performance on CPU, right? Or on computers. And when you're a member of the program, when a startup is a member of the program, or when you are a member of the program, we basically provide three things. Technical expertise. So we have a dedicated team based across the world, which gives startups access to expertise, knowledge, right? Be it with training or direct consulting or technical support. Then we have our own dev cloud. That's brand new. We just started this month because we were thinking about compute resources. We provide compute resources through our own dev cloud, right? If you're a member of the program, you get cloud credits for the dev cloud, and through the dev cloud, you have access either to existing hardware, right? Hardware that is available in the market. Like any other cloud, they have hardware from Intel, which is available in the market, but we also have hardware that is not yet available in the market. So that means anything that will come out in the future, right? So we have CPUs from the future, we have GPUs from the future, we have a lot of hardware that is not available yet, and startup can benefit from these resources. And then we provide go-to-market support. That means we do joint marketing. Basically, we create success stories, case studies, white papers, and we distribute that through the Intel channels. It can be press, it can be social media, it can be dedicated media and PR, or it can be through your own marketing channels. And of course, we can also connect you to certain investors. So you will ask, what is one API? Why is Intel calling this one API? Well, actually, in a couple of months, we'll introduce the program with a different name. And so until now, you won't find a website because when we start the website, we will make the new name public. But at the moment, it's called One API for Startups. And One API is actually Intel's created ecosystem for software development. So if you think about software ecosystems, most of the time, those software ecosystems have been created by companies that lock you into their technology. We did that in the past as well. So we had a software ecosystem with software development tools, with hardware, with libraries, which when you use it, you were locked onto the Intel platform. Same happens with the Intel competition, or same happens if you go to big cloud service providers like Amazon, AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, etc. They try to tie you in, to lock you into their ecosystem so that you stay on this ecosystem. And a few years ago, Intel started an initiative, which is called One API, which is an open ecosystem. And we have gathered a lot of partners, as you can see at the bottom of the slide. This is not everyone, but we have a lot of support from the whole worldwide ecosystem of software development companies and universities and official institutions, computing centers, etc., that are adopting the One API open paradigm of software development. So instead of being locked into a certain ecosystem of a certain vendors, you can develop your software once and run it on any platform from any vendor, not only on Intel, but also on competitive hardware or on not competitive, on different architectures. So usually you might know Intel as a CPU company, but there are also GPUs, so graphic processing unit, and different other architectures. And while using One API, you can develop once and very easily have your software run on different architectures from different vendors. So that's the idea behind One API. And also, besides, Intel has also a huge set of software development tools, which helps software companies, startups, develop their software for the open ecosystem. So that's everything also within the startup program, One API for Startups. And like I said, One API for Startups is building upon this open ecosystem and is a virtual accelerator. So there is no location, there is no fees. We don't take this costs nothing. There is no time limit. Once you're a member, you can stay a member as long as you want. We don't take equity, and we provide a lot of services which I described earlier. So what we are looking for are early stage startups in AI or graphics or high performance computing that have a company at least, right, in pre-release or release stage. So we want you to have a product. We don't need you to have revenues at the moment, right? Early stage doesn't mean revenue all the time. And it doesn't, it's not required to be on Intel technologies. We only want to promote One API. So that means we want you to be open to develop on the open ecosystem. Right? So it's, like I said, this is again what we are doing. So we help startups build and scale faster with stellar technical expertise. We have a great team of experts all around the world. The technical leadership is based in the US, but we support startups all around the world. We give you access to technology, like I said, the dev cloud, but we can also give you cloud credits for other clouds if necessary. We do go-to-market, like I said, and we give you, through our platform, we give you access to other startups globally, and you can network and build up your expertise with your peers. So, yeah. So actually, I described everything that's here. So how we do that? So when you become member, we first do a round of technical enablement. We look at your technology. We work with you on building your product, optimizing your product for the open ecosystem with maximum performance on the open ecosystem. As soon as we have worked on a product, you go to market, and we help you with marketing, and maybe even eventually we connect you to Intel's partners and customers. And based on that, we have a self-service startup portal, which gives you access to a lot of information, NDA information. Yeah, I forgot to say we give you access to non-public information. So you sign an NDA with Intel, and within this portal you have access to trainings which are not public. You have access to a knowledge base. You have access to a lot of content which is not public. You can attend workshops, hands-on workshops. You can attend the hackathons. A lot of different activities happening on the portal. Well, basically that's it. Thank you very much for your attention. Like I said in the beginning, it's an extension to Ignite. Ignite is for the few. We are for the many. That's basically the difference. And you can be based anywhere. So thank you very much, and I'm open to your questions.
Any questions for Ralph? Does that answer your question, Mtambi? Okay, great. Are there any questions for Ralph?
Good afternoon. Sorry I was late. My name is Nancy. My question is in terms of inclusion and diversity. What programs and what support is there? Thank you.
Is this a question for me or for Bienvenue?
Thank you, Ralph. It looks like it's a question for me. And so I'll try to answer that. Great question. And at the beginning, at the opening part, I talk about Intel Rise, right, and 2030 goal. And then within that Rise strategy, we're looking at making technology fully inclusive, right, that are enabled by, Intel technology, obviously. But in terms of that inclusiveness, we have developed different type of programs. Okay, for example, the program on digital readiness. And then in terms of that program, you have the digital readiness for leaders, right? We want to include the leaders as well, right, to understand how the technology is working. And there we bring into them knowledge about emerging technologies for the likes of 5G, the likes of AI, the likes of data protection and privacy, and so on. We also have, and by the way, also there, depending on how you're looking at the inclusion part, right? Because among the policymakers, we have both men, women, and everybody that comes in there. So if that aspect is already included in there. But apart from that, we have programs on AI for youth, for example. Right, that is towards the youth, right? You have AI for future workforce, right? AI for current workforce. That's addressed, for example, AI for current, those who actually want to reskill themselves to find new job. AI for future workforce is for those who are actually learning now and then they want to learn some skills on AI for the job of the future. So I think it is embedded in the inclusion, diversity and inclusion is embedded in the different programs that we have. Having said that, Intel has a full diversity and inclusion, division, and that we could talk about that, from the other, additional perspective if you wish. Thank you.
Awesome. Any questions for Ralph? Okay.
Thank you. So my name is Alan from Moringa School. I just wanted to understand Intel's position or role, towards skills development. And for me, this is particularly pertinent, considering that Africa and Kenya in general is still lagging behind, in terms of digital skills deficit. So for such programs to really have the kind of meaningful impact that we're looking to create, we really need then to train more digital skill workers who, can then be exposed to, programs such as the Intel One API program. And that way now we can start having, a very strong and vibrant developer community, building apps, and accessing the Intel API. So I just wanted to understand Intel's involvement, towards skills development and how, companies like Moringa can also then plug in.
Thank you very much for the question, and great question, and that is actually part of what we're looking at as we're doing the study with AfriLabs, because there will be different, different needs, and for sure skills will be part of that. And in fact, after the question to Raf, I will explain a little bit what he's trying to do, and then that will start the conversation. Having said that, there have been a number of initiatives, in terms of skills that we are actually doing already on the continent, apart from what I just talked about. For example, last year in September, we have signed an MOU with Smart Africa, right? And in that MOU is to build the capacity not only of the policymakers, but also of the IT specialists and students. But before we signed that MOU, we have already been doing capacity building through Smart Africa platform since 2020, right? And that is with the Smart Africa arm, Smart Africa Digital Academy, right? And there, so we do capacity building, whether it's in 5G and broadband connectivity. We do capacity building, whether it's on AI. So we did one recently on AI for government officials, right? Just to explain what is AI, what are the use cases, and so on. We also did capacity building on blockchain. We also did capacity building on data center and cloud, and so on and so forth. And so this is just to give you an example of saying, well, once we get the recommendation from the study, that is going to say, for example, okay, well, there's a need to build the skills of developers in XYZ. right? And then based on that, then we can tailor some of the program that we have. Okay, in which area is it? Is it on digital infrastructure? Okay, so is it on AI? Is it on blockchain and so on and so forth? Thank you.
Any other questions for Ralph?
My question is on the program in terms of joining and stuff. For the Ignite, she did mention, the other presenter did mention that you have to be recommended by a startup, and I just want to understand for this one, what are the requirements in terms of a startup being able to be part of it?
Yeah, good question. So in order to be part of it, you have to apply, first of all. But in general, we look at HPC, AI, and graphic startups. So you have to be in one of these areas, right, where you need accelerated computing. So you can call it deep tech or tech startup or accelerated computing startup. So that's a requirement, right? We cannot help you if you are in food or if you develop shallow tech applications. Then we want at least to have you incorporated. So it's not a student team, but incorporated. You have a corporation. You are working on an actual product already, and we want you to have basically your product ready to go, at least the alpha version. So otherwise we cannot help you, right? We can't help with ideation. We have more with optimization, creating monetization for a product, creating a technological roadmap for a product, testing, benchmarking your product. So that's the requirement. We don't actually look at if you develop your technology on Intel. That's not a requirement. We don't look at revenue. So if you make zero revenue, no problem. We'll help you to build a product that generates revenue. So that's the plan. Does this answer your question?
Yes, I think certainly the other part of the question is how do you apply, right? And so for that, well, you can contact Ralph, you can contact myself, or you can contact Kate, but you will see our email towards the end of the presentation.
Great. I think we have one or two more questions in the room, but Pashay, do you have any questions online?
Yes, Nekesa, we do.
Okay, let's take those two, and then we'll take two from the room and then close this session.
Okay. So the first question is from an anonymous attendee. He asked, would there be opportunities for more links with India and China? In many cases, production costs and market structure are similar to Africa. That's the first question.
So from my side, I can tell you we work with startups in India already and China. And we are at the beginning, but we have very good links into China and India as well. Right, a lot of startups in these countries.
Okay, thank you very much. This is for Melvin. The second question. Ralph mentioned earlier that Intel's objective is to promote their one API dev cloud solution. The startups have to be part of the accelerator program in order to leverage the dev cloud service, or is it open to all startups, whether or not they are part of the accelerator program?
So the Intel Cloud, Intel Dev Cloud or Intel Cloud will be open, let's say, in a couple of months to any company which wants to benchmark or test our technology. At the moment, so it's going to be a service, right? A cloud service. It's not a competition to AWS or Azure, but it's a cloud service. And through our program, you get cloud credits to be able to use that service for free. That's the difference. Usually you pay for cloud services, but if you're a member of the program, you will be able to get cloud credits, which makes it an easy win for your startup.
Thank you, Ralph. That's all from everybody online.
Thank you, Pashe. We'll take a question from Barak and then, one at the back.
Thank you, Nekesa. I think my question is more directed to Bienvenue. And thanks to also the online presenter. It's more or less a repetition on the issue of the foundry. I've been working in the area of connectivity, specifically community networks, and one of the areas that has impacted us negatively, not just here but across the continent, is the shortage of chips that took place, which brings me back to the issue of local centers that can probably enable the production of chips locally to reduce the time that we wait for equipment to come from China or those other places, specifically 2 months and so, which really raises the cost and inevitably also raises the cost that the community is able to access connectivity at, and again it just affects the whole ecosystem, startup ecosystem as well. So I don't know whether from an African perspective Intel has thought about this. The other thing is of course there's an effort to bring data centers closer to communities. Of course we have a couple of tier 5 centers in East Africa, in West Africa coming up, and the question of high performance computing has come up. There are data protection implications that will determine where we can play with the data. So is again Intel thinking of having instances locally, just the way the likes of Amazon are doing, because that will then be key to circumvent the data protection considerations. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your questions. Great questions. For the first question, my colleague Kate online indicated, foundry decisions are decisions that are made at a very, very high level. And so, some of the indicators that they take into account to make decisions are not known to us. But having said that, one key element, the shortage of chips or, supply chain issue is a global issue. Right, that many of the, developed world, they're actually looking at how to rebalance the supply chain, right? So you hear from the news, what is happening in the US in terms of, investment to produce, to have manufacturing chips in the US. You also hear from the news what is happening in Europe as well, right? To have, manufacturing chips there and so on. So it's a global challenge, and, companies are looking at ways and then how they can find a solution to that. But in terms of, what are the plans for Africa, I don't have information on that, but it's an important point that you raised. And my personal view is that, as solution have been found in terms of rebalancing, the global supply chain, perhaps that can help alleviate some of the time to access to those chips. Now, for the second question, yes, I think it's a really important aspect in terms of the lack of digital infrastructure on the continent. We do have, right, digital infrastructure, but it's just not enough. Right. For example, there is a study done by the World Bank, I believe, that was published in 2020, that says for Africa to reach universal access to the internet, to broadband, there's a need to invest $100 billion over the next 10 years up until 2030. Right. So, which means what? Yes, there's a lack, but there's also an opportunity. Now, there are also initiatives on the continent, for example, with Smart Africa, whereby they are looking at how to work with different partners and stakeholders to have sub-regional data centers, right? And so I think perhaps, if you get to the website, you can get additional information. And once that becomes a reality, you can see really in terms of user experience and all of those things where you host your data and so on and so forth, that will improve. But there are a lot of work as well that are done by the private sector, right? The likes of the company just mentioned, Amazon, or the likes of Microsoft, and so on. And what I can say is, like, some of those partners are our customers, right? Because they use Intel technology to build the infrastructure that they actually deploy, right? And so potentially you might find that some of those capabilities that they have in the infrastructure are enabled by our technology, okay? Now, yes, agree with you, there are policy implications, right? In terms of, okay, how do you move data, for example, let's say across the countries, on the continent, how do you mutualize the digital infrastructure that are available to enable, new technologies and so on. And so also there you have, different countries that are having different data protection regulations, right? And you also have efforts within Smart Africa as well that are looking at, okay, even if the data protection regulations in every country are different, how do we try and harmonize them, right, to foster a single digital market? And therefore there you have different elements. Okay, how do you enable free flow of data, right? Because if you want to be a Pan-African company, you need to be able to get data from Kenya, data from Uganda, and so on and so forth. And therefore, there's a need to have free flow of data. But at the same time, how do you ensure that sensitive data could be protected, right? And then how do you balance both in terms of ensuring the protection of the data, but at the same time, or localization of the data, but at the same time, enable the technologies. So work ongoing. And clearly, in terms of regulation, you can't get it perfect before you start working, right? I think it's an iterative process. So I hope that I answer your question. Thank you.
So yeah. Just a question, because you're looking for incorporated entities. Do you have any support for IP registration in deep tech? I think because that's also something that's usually lacking in our ecosystems of like the technical support to do deep tech IP registration.
Okay, I think that's a great question. I think that's an input into the work we're doing in terms of what is required to support the ecosystem.
Okay.
Okay, I think it's good now. Oh, man. Oh.
My name is John Mushiri. I'm the founder of Jifunze. So Jifunze is a bit of an edutech. My question is more of clarity for the question he had asked. At the moment, AI, blockchain is quite of a new industry, and there's a lot of misinformation of what really works, what doesn't really work in that space. So what kind of support or partnerships are we looking forward to, like, are you guys would be open to for guys who are like into the edutech space that can be able to ensure masses can be able to have clarity of how artificial intelligence and blockchain works? Because you might find that in a situation whereby Jifunze has a large number of people who are on it, and they might be able to ensure this information spreads out to a bigger space than a more localized space like this. And what kind of qualifications will be required for people to qualify to partner or get support from Intel? Thank you.
I think, thank you very much for the question. I would like to ask Raf or Kate if they, have maybe some experience on how this is done elsewhere. But also, we will pick up on your question once we get to the, exchange in terms of question and answer session, just to note those as one of the challenges or areas where we need to look at.
Kate?
Okay. Yeah, thanks very much for that question. I think that, we work with existing startups in that field. Your question ups program and needs more.
Sorry, Kate, I'll ask you to just, we lost you for a few seconds. If you could just go over that again.
Okay. So usually when a startup enters into our program, we do connect them to the respective tech experts within Intel, within their field, and then they acquire more deep learning on their tech. But I think that your question is a little bit more on an earlier area. So I think that it would be probably best to look at AI skills platforms, and what the different. I would say probably you're looking more at university-based courses like that you could also maybe find on Coursera or Get Smarter or Udemy. And then once you've developed a product and started with your startup, then we would be happy to help from our side. And maybe Ralph, I don't know whether you can offer something in addition.
Well, if it's about skills, like you said, we can give skills that are on top of what open platforms like Coursera or what you find on YouTube even provide. So we do a lot of trainings. We have a whole department doing software trainings about many technologies. Most is published, if it's public, most is published on our YouTube channel or on the intel.com website. So there is a lot of possibilities to get new skills. We don't replace something, a university course or online university courses. We just add up on their skills. If you're part of the program, then you get different insights into certain technology, into certain areas. We spend more time with you. We can also give you private training, but that's then part of the program.
Great. Any burning question for Kate or Ralph that you feel you must ask now and not via email later? Awesome. Then we'll then please give another round of applause for Ralph and Kate, and thank you so much for those sessions. We're now going into the very last bit of this program. This will go about half an hour, and so, Pache, I think there's 2 slides that Bienvenue shared with you. We're going to show those now. And once we're done with that, we'll then move to the open plenary, where I would love to hear from you what you're doing in the deep tech space and how you feel other people in the room can support your work.
No, it's the presentation I used initially.
Oh. Okay, just ask a question to Pache, you have a presentation from Bienvenue. Will you please share it?
Just before the Q&A, there are 2 slides. Just move us back 3 slides. Yeah, just on the slide you just shared. Just go towards the end. Yes, yeah, just here. So in fact, this couple of slides is just to provide you with a background and context of what we're trying to do now, right? Or what we've started already a couple of weeks ago. And so on the next slide, right? So here you can see the objective of why we're doing the study with AfriLabs, but also why we also consulting with different stakeholders, including yourself, which verticals we're looking at, as you can see on the screen here, but also enabled by deep tech, right? And that's why we're having this conversation. And then as we said earlier, as you can see on the second bullet, is to see, okay, how you could already plug into the existing programs that we just present now, Intel Ignite, Intel One API for Startup. But also, the other part is to help us to understand what are the needs, what are the areas where we can look at the gap and see which program we can put together. And so the study is not finalized yet. We hope to get the recommendation out in a few weeks. On the next slide, and then the following one, please. Yes, so here actually is to provide you with the information. The question asked earlier, right? For Intel One API for Startup program, you have the email from Raf here, right? You can reach out to him if you need a little bit more information and about what are the conditions, how to apply, and so on and so forth. If you want to, interested in Intel Ignite program, right, you can also reach out to Kate, as she said, right? You have her email here. And, well, you can email all of us. My email address is also there, I believe, right? Yes, on the third bullet there. So if you want a little bit more information about what you're trying to do here for the African continent, right? But also, on One API, Intel Ignite. So I think this slide is important, at least, so that we keep the conversation, ask clarification questions, and if you need any other information. Yeah, just. Well, you can do both. You can take the picture, but I believe we'll send you also the presentation because, there have been updated presentations from Kate and Raf that we need to get and consolidate both. So you can take the picture, but we'll also, send the presentation once we get everything together. Okay, great. So on the following slide, okay, just before that, yes, that is the Q&A section, then that branched to the Nekesa now. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Great, so this is the last session before we break for lunch, and this is your opportunity. We'd really love to hear from you. I mean, we've had great things, and I'll share, for example, what we had yesterday from investors when we basically asked, are you investing in deep tech in Kenya on the continent? And for them, there was, I think, two core issues. One is they aren't finding what they feel would be sustainable deep tech startups. That's one of the things that came up. Two, there's a skills gap in their perspective, and I speak very generally, not that all the investors in Kenya or in Africa think this, it's a very general statement, but these are two core things that have come out. But what I would love to hear from you guys now, and in no particular order, because I know there's students here, there's developers here, there's ESOs here, policymakers, what do you feel are your pain points in terms of the deep tech space? And perhaps before I hand over the mic to you guys, the other thing that I'll say is we've had really great presentations. We had Kate's presentation, and she spoke about in Munich, and a lot of those people that are participating in Intel Ignite are very young students, are getting their investment based just off of their ideas, are getting recommended by investors to take part in the Intel Ignite program, and then are getting investment at the end of that program. We've had that in Tel Aviv, a lot of that pipeline is ex-military, and so they're coming in with already solutions that they believe and quite possibly are going to be quite sustainable going into the Intel Ignite program. Do you feel that we're in a similar situation here where you can count on the investors in your network to recommend you to programs like Ignite? Are we not there? I can see smiles and heads shaking already. So let's begin this conversation. What's working for us? What will never work for us? What should we do more of? Right, let me start here.
Okay, thank you, Nekesa. I think one of the things that Kenya has going for us is talent. So we keep on saying that we don't have talent, all these questions, but we have people who are being taken from Kenya to work for SAP in Munich. We have people who are being taken from Kenya to work for Klarna in Sweden. These are Kenyans. So whenever investors have this question of that we don't have enough talent, I think it's a lie. And then also the other thing is we don't have enough investors with deep technical expertise themselves. So they'll come up with all these stories that they are not investing in people, but even they don't understand this deep tech themselves. So I think that's one of the challenges. There needs to be probably more done in that particular space. That will probably take a couple of years. But then I also have the other challenge of the way, some of the investors perceive, indigenous Kenyans who are building this tech sometimes, is you'll find that, they'll still go with the same thing of checking, sort of which schools or things that you went to. But even if your team has people from MIT or, Oxford and things like that, they'll still have questions. And then the other challenge is like, when you go as an early stage deep tech startup and you're trying to raise $1 million, $2 million, because that is what you need to pull that talent who's working at Facebook, who's working at Google, to come and work at your startup, you'll be told that you're asking for too much money. Right? While a similar startup doing what you're doing in another ecosystem, let's say Israel or somewhere else, is raising a seed round of $10 million. Right? So we need, more actual investors saying, the truth of maybe they don't have that capital, or we need them combining with the bigger players, the Sequoias, the other players, to actually come into the market, because they understand the speak between the big VCs, and they can encourage them to come into our market, because if you go there as a small startup, you actually don't get access to a lot of the people. So we need that happening a bit more. And then finally, you'll find that you're an African startup, your whole team is African, and then you'll go to a VC here and pitch, and they'll tell you your idea doesn't make sense. Then you'll go to a VC in Switzerland or to the US, and they'll love your idea and they'll invest in you. So then you get confused. You're like, okay, so who's actually knows what they're talking about? So I think there's that also challenge where investors here need to actually believe in the talent here and believe that there's opportunity here. And because even they are here, they understand even the idea you have. Because if you go and say you're doing AI to fix transport in Africa, you might be told by someone, why don't you guys use trains? Right? But you've been here and you know that the way matatus work, the way things work here. So it would actually be better for us if we had investors from here who understand the local challenges. So I think those are a couple of the things I would think about, top of my head that are challenges. And even in terms of technology-wise, for example, even with Intel, right? We have, sometimes challenges with energy here and high compute. I think there's only South Africa and Egypt which have supercomputers on the continent, right? So there's also, we need a lot of support on that. So even our data centers here, most of them don't have high performance computing capacity. So there's also large investment there. So for example, I think they say we need about 7,000 megawatts of data centers on the continent for us to get to even the level that South Africa is in terms of the amount of ability to handle data. And so that would take maybe $100 billion or plus dollars to that. So investors also need to be able to put money into those kind of ecosystem things. Yeah.
Thank you. That was a very passionate response. I suspect you've experienced that firsthand. So several things there. One, you've talked about skill, but perhaps this is actually skill on the part of investors where they need to understand the space as well. You spoke about trust issues, patient capital, understanding local context. On the part of investors, and I believe even other ecosystem players as well, understanding that perhaps the kind of issues we are addressing priority areas here may not necessarily be priority areas in other countries. And also, I think you've mentioned just local investors generally who might be more likely to understand local context than international investors. So thank you so much. We'll take that comment and then two here. That to here, and then we'll come back to the back.
My name is Moses. I'm a software engineer as well as a university student. So my question is on, at the university level, most of us have ideas that maybe are in the AI field. So like, in particular, we've been working on a prototype on a project that helps facilitate communications between organizations and its customers, because we believe, like, let's say you're calling Safaricom and you have to wait for hours before you get a customer care reply or something like that. Now, the problem with the universities is that we don't have a network. We don't have the people, the right people like to connect to be able to develop these ideas. And getting the connections is very much unlikely, considering that most of the events there are mostly on maybe learning. Much investment in the universities is on learning and maybe projects, final year projects that would help a student graduate. So, like, I've seen the blockchain technology grow rapidly, and we've had more of them coming into universities trying to create hackathons for people, and it has helped grow the technology because we've had solutions coming in from this particular project. But the field on AI is slightly behind, and then considering that you don't have, like, I tried joining AfriLab, and you could see the requirements. Maybe for a particular group within the institution, there is a requirement fee that is required, and most of people at the all of the people at the university as students, we're not able to raise these kinds of funds. So we become limited in terms of capital, we become limited in terms of resources in building these prototypes. So I was wondering, what is the consideration on building that network at the universities? Are we going to see you people getting more into universities and trying as much as possible to maybe foster this kind of ideations, brainstorming, thinking, and bringing them up to speed or up to level with the other institutions across the world? Thank you.
What university are you from? And thanks for that question.
I'm from Egerton.
Egerton.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm curious what other people in the room think about should we be going into universities, or should universities be setting up those kinds of networks and inviting us in? Should they want our support to do so? The reason I ask is, I know that there's several universities that are now setting up these kinds of spaces, so whether an accelerator or a business incubation, etc., and then leading those conversations with other stakeholders and inviting those stakeholders into the university to interact with the students, to invest in them, and so on and so forth. So I'd be curious if that is something that Egerton might want to do in the future, because it does feel like some kind of trend. But even if it doesn't, I think I would encourage you to walk into any hub across the country. Those ASEC represented here by Tim recently, that's the Association of Startup and SME Enablers in Kenya. They have, if I'm not wrong, is it about 60 plus members? A lot of those are innovation hubs. In Nairobi, there's Association of Countrywide Innovation Hubs that focuses on innovation hubs outside of the major cities, so rural and peri-urban areas. All of those really set up to support people like you. But I think what's interesting for me is several years ago, and I remember this even with my work at the iHub, we invested quite a bit of time, and actually with Intel, although I think that program terminated, invested quite a bit of time going into universities and having these exact conversations, upskilling and that kind of thing. I think on our end, why it may have stopped is again the rise of university hubs and accelerators, and so that need was now being met. Rise of clubs within universities, and so again, they were now leading that conversation on upskilling themselves and perhaps just inviting us when it came to training and so on. So what I feel may have happened is we saw this trend and assumed that it was exactly that, a trend across the country. I think what you're saying now, perhaps that isn't the case. So yeah, I would welcome a conversation after this to try and figure that out. Lastly, with regards to AfriLabs, we are a network of hubs. And so if Egerton had a hub, then that hub could apply to join the AfriLabs network, but we wouldn't be able to take individual membership. So that is definitely why that fee would have looked a bit too high for you. Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Ronald Okumu. I run a company called AI Connect. We are building AI algorithms for the aviation sector. We are based at the Fahari Innovation Lab by Kenya Airways. Our biggest problem is capital. We're pre-revenue. Getting pre-seed funding right now is very difficult. We're in a very unique space in the sense that we're entrepreneurs. And as we speak, we're now developing 4 unique use cases for the Pan-African Airline Association. So we feel that in the case of using Intel, especially the One API, we can have a lot of play, but we need to be sort of like connected to the investor network.
Is there any investor in the room who might want to respond to that? I know based off of, or any investor readiness expert before I call them out. But however, so what you raise, really good point, and it came up in our roundtable yesterday as well, where there's a real need for patient capital across the African continent. Maybe that ties into the upskilling of investors that you're talking about, because they need to, they and other ecosystem members, I think, need to understand that when we talk about deep tech, you're not looking at returns in 1 or 2 years. You may be looking at 10 years before, you know, the thing is validated, and you now can begin to see in another 10 years I might get my return on investment. So no question, but I mean, no real response for you, but to say yes, you're absolutely right. There is a bit of a gap with regards to that patient capital and also very early stage capital that is being hopefully addressed and that we will highlight in our recommendations. Yeah.
Thank you, Nekesa. Mine are mostly comments. I think first and foremost, just to appreciate what AfriLab has done by bringing us together in this space, and I think this is the starting point or the way to go. Just sharing my experience, as I've mentioned, maybe thinking of myself also as an investor in the community network space that we have been doing. Although it was a social enterprise, what I have seen is that the more you deploy solutions that resonate with the community, the demand just goes up, and you are on a continuous running chase to meet the demand in the community, which means that you have to keep raising money as you move along. So one of the things I'm also learning is that you need to have the character to be able to sustain that momentum, and maybe that's one of the things that AfriLabs can look at. We've also had conversations around skilling at one of our institutions, the Africa Higher Education Research Institute, and I do hope that we are planning some conversations towards the end of the year. I do hope that AfriLabs and everyone in the room can be part and parcel of. Again, we have the Africa Domain Name System Forum coming up in Nairobi in November. One of the areas was to look at how labs and tech entrepreneurs can come into the fray, and we'll also follow that up with AfriLabs. Just, it's a platform. From what I have seen, years back, we are in our 10th year, we had the issue of payment gateways, integration of payment gateways across the African continent as a recurring question in our meetings. And what we did was to bring innovators who are building payment gateways, the PesaPals and the likes. As we speak, now we have so many payment solutions across the African continent that are integrating many banks. So I think my challenge to all of us in the room is that there are no answers. We just have to take a bold step of faith, be part of the conversation, and be part of providing the answers. But still, my request to Intel is that if we can have these chips manufactured locally, it will be a big game changer, especially for us, because now we need to be able to develop our own local radios, local solutions, if we are really to move with the AI cloud. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Baraka here, just start, begin doing things, deploy, and the market will kind of build itself around you as well. Be part of conversations. And Barak is actually a member of Kicternet, which I mentioned earlier. If anyone's not familiar with Kicternet, it's probably one of very few networks in Kenya that actually summons policymakers, summons decision makers to give them an audience. And so if you haven't joined the Kicternet network, I encourage you to. It's the Kenya ICT network. You really just need to Google it, and I think there'll be a link there to join the mailing list, right? There's really great conversations that happen there. Did you have a question or a comment? Yeah, okay.
Again, I'm Nikabed Gaddafa, so I'm an AI engineer. Well, I think I'm going to answer. You said about sustainability in startups and skills. So first of all, I'm going to touch on skills, sustainability. Well, I've been in the ecosystem for quite a time, and to be honest, there's one thing I'm going to say. The reason why most startups are not sustainable is when it comes to funding. I mean, like for a seed round inside our country. I mean, I think the highest I've seen, like, it's $50,000, right? That's 5 million Kenya shillings. But if you'd compare, and I don't like comparing, with the same company doing the same technology in somewhere like Europe, and I mean, I think USA is the best. Same, they are funded like almost millions, all right? If you had to compare both, and I think he highlighted that, you cannot be able to hire that skill. I mean, for me, like personally, I was doing a startup in agriculture. I needed somebody who could do GIS. I mean, a GIS developer in our country are very limited. So this person requires like somebody requires like 100K. And I mean, you have 5 M, and so I mean, how will you be sustainable with that? You need to like be into production. Okay, if you're into production, then the business model changes, and understanding the ecosystem, you find that you'll have to charge more as compared to what you had intended, right? With the market research, it's all gone, whatever you've done, and you won't be able to like be sustainable. You'll just collapse. And then the second thing also in sustainability, I think on that same funding is based on, if I don't like saying this, but a person of color, okay, I won't be given as much money as a startup which has somebody who is more, so that is also an issue, and I think it's something we need to talk on and like change that perspective. If a person who has this color can only be given this amount of money, there's some big questions. And then the second is local investors. I won't say who, but if you pitch to them, you find like they will give you money, okay? But the amount of the percentage they want in your company, I don't think you really want to do that unless you are in for the money. But if you are in for the product and to bring impact into the market and the community, you might actually pass, because I mean, 100,000 Kenya shillings and somebody wants more than 5% inside your company. Okay, that's crazy. You can check on it. Anybody who was raised like here down. I mean, I'm not yet the bigger player, but yeah, on the skills part. So I think I'm gonna say thank you to Intel. They have this program on training AI from data center to edge. I got certified by them, luckily. So, and then they have these tools which make it easy for you to be able to like deploy your models. Let's say for the edge, they have an open a hardware device called OpenVino. So it makes it easy for you like to develop your solutions. So that is it. So on the skills, I've been like interacting with various both graduates and undergraduates. I myself having been on the same sector, and you find like for me, I never knew something like Arduino, right? Back in my undergraduate, I did electrical. And until when I came outside here and you find somebody is telling you, can you develop such a system, like prototyping with Arduino? And I'm like, what is that? I only know embedded systems, and I'm like, so you find that also our education kind of limits us to what we are to get into the market. And this is something you can be told by any student who has graduated recently. And that's the reason like schools like Moringa are in there to give you that thing you missed it in campus, and so that you can be able to fit into the market. Okay, so, and I think also on that is, for me, having seen the problem, I decided to start 2 communities. One is based on, it's called One Quantum Kenya, where I teach more on quantum technologies. I mean, this is the future, but if you guys don't know, quantum will be like, will actually overtake AI in some few years to come, because they'll merge and it will be like the key figure. And then I've interacted with the Arduino guys, and they actually accepted me to have a community where now I can be able to teach people Arduino boards and how to develop it. And I think that's the best way to go for now, is to like engage with communities who are certain in this field, like if it's IoT, if it's AI, if it's blockchain, and so on and so on. Yeah, that's it. That's for the skills part. Yeah.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Not to rush. I mean, great insight, great input, and please keep it coming. But I will want, is an Intel fellow in the room here. Well, he was an Intel, but now he's working outside of Intel. But when you are an Intel fellow, you are an Intel fellow, whether you are inside or not. So maybe he can share some of his experience and his thought with us.
Yeah, thank you. That was a surprise. Yes, I've been, I'm a founder of a company called AfriLabs, and I'm sure you'll be hearing a lot about Luna, which is a social commerce platform that we're bringing out that addresses a lot of the issues you're talking about in terms of coming up with ideas that are monetizable. And at some point I wanted to come and talk about it across. It's a social platform actually developed here in Nairobi, but it's for Africa. So every African country can use it, and provides a lot of those opportunities. But I wanted to address issues related to Intel technology, chips and so on, because I worked at Intel for 17 years and was responsible for designing the server technology that Intel has at that time. So putting together a foundry is not an easy thing. And as you know, there's actually no foundry in Africa, right? Because you're looking at which particular technology are you going to try to deploy, because there are different levels of foundry technologies. Right now, people are dealing with 5 nanometer. You know what a nanometer is, right? So that's extremely where you can put in the orders of 10 billion transistors, right? To do any technology like that, which is typically what you're getting in those chips now, you're looking at investments of $15 billion and above. So it's not something that Africa can embark upon in any sense. And not only that, we don't have the technology for really developing all the parts that it takes to put together a foundry and maintain it. Lithography, dealing with all the dyes and clean room technology, all those things we don't have any idea. We don't have that kind of expertise. So it's not something that I would advocate for Africa, because there are lots of technologies. On the other hand, we can develop and monetize locally, right? And at some point, I'd like to give a talk about opportunities in those areas where we can develop using a lot of techniques, including machine learning, by the way. I don't go as far as to call it AI, but I would end at deep learning and maybe machine learning. Those are lots of applications that you can do with those technologies to solve a lot of Africa's problem. And if anybody's interested, we can talk a little bit about that offline. But at some point, I can come and talk about, the technologies from the Silicon Valley and how things actually happen in Silicon Valley, because I spent a lot of my time in the Silicon Valley. So I'll be glad to do that anytime. And I'm here in Nairobi. Okay? Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that offer, which we will take you up on really soon. It's really great to have you in the room. I want to say congratulations on setting up those communities, because people don't, I think many times we don't really appreciate how vital it is to be part of a community. And even from an ESO or a hub perspective, yes, you have tables and chairs and you run programs, but you're really leaning on the people in that space to create the community and even sub-communities within the community. And so it's people like you that make everyone else's work a lot easier. So thank you very much for that. I wanted to touch on, you spoke about investment and skin color. I think people say quite often investment is racist, it's tribal, it's gender biased, you know, and I think ultimately where I sit in that whole spectrum is, can we then just find our own money and invest it in our own people? Because everyone's money is their money to do what they want to do with it, right? And so to his point that we need to begin to grow our local investment community with people that understand our context, because they've lived it themselves, who understand the nuances, the Kenyan nuances, the African nuances, and are able to walk that journey with us because they've walked that journey themselves. I think for me, that is where we would prefer to invest our time and resources in creating that kind of investment infrastructure. Yeah. Any other questions or comments before we bring this to a close? I'll take Stephanie and then that gentleman.
Hi, good afternoon. It's afternoon already. Yeah, so my name is Stephanie Ngoku, and I run Upscale Consulting. We work with startups and SMEs in helping them to package their businesses and promote them for investment. Good to see you, Mutembe, here. We have interacted together in the same setup, and Ronald is just left. So I just wanted to comment this conversation AfriLab is having is quite timely, and my experience with startups that we have engaged has been especially when and I'll just resound what some of the startups have mentioned, the challenge of being able to engage developers to work for them, and that of course they're very expensive, that requires capital. And what I have seen some of them do is that they would have their developers become part of, the team. So they would seed shares. So that way, whoever this guy is working for them is, they are not able to, there is not cash generated at the time to be able to pay them. So that sort of, being a shareholder, or gives them that feel that whatever investment they are making into developing whatever solution that the startups are working on, well, in the long run, they can be able to, they can be able to benefit. So that's what I see some of them are doing. But the conversation with Intel, what I see is that how is it that, and I guess this is the whole conversation we are having is around that, how they're going to be able to support these startups in providing or filling that gap in a way that probably they can be able to, their team can be able to support the startups to be able to fill in that gap of, developing whatever solutions they're having. On the other end, on the funding bit, I think there's, we have talked about patient capital. Well, for an investor, most of these startups, it really takes time before there is there's cash flow generated or there is a return. It can take years, or 10 years or so. And so there could be lack of understanding of, some of these tech solutions work. Could there be that there's information which needs to be shared with the investors who would be interested to go to that space? Or better still, the likes of the government, they have bigger muscles in that they could be able also to partner with the startups in providing that kind of support. And I think a partnership with Intel, because of the credibility that they have with the government, could find some sort of synergy in providing that, the deep tech kind of support that the startups need, with collaboration with the likes of the government. I don't know. Well, that is if just in case there could be other investors who would understand and provide that sort of patient capital. But I think the government can be able to be more patient, I think. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much for your comments, suggestions. And in fact, that is the reason why we are actually here, right? The reason why we want to understand what is happening on the ground. That is the reason why we are here, to see where the gaps are. And I think what you just said are actually really valuable inputs into the study that we're working with AfriLabs, as we collecting the information and see what would be the recommendations, right? And so one of the recommendations that I will say already that you have here, that we had yesterday, was to try and see how we can work together with the VC community and help them understand what is deep tech, right? What is it about, right? That is one aspect you just mentioned. What you mentioned also in terms of how to work with government, right? And we're trying to do that already, but from the area of policy discussion and so on, but specifically to this, I think that's also a great input, that we can see what would be the best way, right? That not only we can share our findings, because one thing is already to share the findings with the government, say, okay, well, this is what we're seeing, this is what we heard, right? Not that what we said, right? This is what we heard from the startup community with regard to deep tech. This is what, based on the study we've done, is recommended. How can we work together? So I think that's, those are really great input, and thank you very much for that. Yeah.
Hello. Hi. My name again is Kevin from Matrix Black Box. I just have 3 comments, basically about what you've spoken around here, and a few recommendations that I think we should pick up. First of all, we have this issue of funding that people are talking about a lot. I think I can suggest a way around it in which the community can come together and we do it. AfriLabs has the opportunity to bring all these people together. I form a consortium. If you guys look back to the story of Silicon Valley, how it all started, it was a consortium actually of just students, universities, working with the government to create all these microchips that they were using in the military. And so they worked with the military to provide those chips to the military. And that's how they got the funding, because the military gave the money, and the money was given to the university gave to the students, and the students, through their professors, a lab was established, and they were able to create the silicon chips that we now play around with, which was used in their military warplanes. So I'd like to ask AfriLab to see if they can form a consortium of sort, whereby you can bring in different government entities, including Youth Fund and the likes, and see if you can work to create these labs specifically inside universities, i.e. where our guys are, so that every university has an AfriLab, and right there, whichever ideas, because that's where most ideas are actually, with university guys, with the help of professors to help guide the students, with the help of other students who can bring in the team effort for the skills needed for their startups. And of course, campus life is much more sustainable and cheap, i.e. you don't need to use a lot of money, because coming all the way, say, up to here, if you're a startup and this is where you're supposed to be working, it would cost you a lot of money moving up and down. But in a university, you have the hostels and everything. See if you can form a consortium there, build, because most universities have a lot of land actually. See if you can have something to do there, and then you can put together a consortium there where people can do their projects and get the funding from the various government agencies that you guys can put together on that. Number 2, Intel versus RISC-V. I don't know, you've worked with Intel for a long time, but I don't know if you've ever heard of RISC-V. RISC-V is a way in which you can design your own microchips, and then you just, using the Google and other players in the field, they work with the labs to manufacture your own chip. So the weird thing is I did not see Intel as part of the group. I saw Samsung, I saw Google, I saw AMD is there, I think, but I didn't see Intel in there. I don't know why Intel is missing in RISC-V, because in RISC-V, basically, we can design our own chips there here if the labs, if making a foundry is too expensive, and you can facilitate in manufacturing that chip, wherever in TSMC or with Samsung or whichever conglomerate we need to work with. That is if making the lab is very, very expensive. However, I have also seen that Google has a box-like container that they have built that can have all the lithography tools needed to manufacture a chip up to almost 180 nanometers, which I think is still workable for us if you're working with the normal chips for IoT, which is most of the businesses also that are also represented here. Maybe you can consider also to work with Google to bring such containers all the way to Kenya in case we can't build entire foundries from scratch. In that case, we can spend as little as probably 1B in Kenya shillings to have a foundry here in small packages. And even if you're working with larger nanometers, we can still play around with them to build computers on the same level and scale. Then comes to sustainability, which is my last point. Labs should expand space to include more sustainability. Most businesses have this problem of having what we call overheads, very large overheads that kill the business even before it actually leaves the lab. You have rent as an overhead, you have water, you have electricity, and especially here in Kenya, we know how the high cost of electricity is, which causes a lot of problems because technology is all electricity based. So even if you wanted it adopted, we find it very hard. So one of the things that I would recommend is that the lab, i.e. AfriLabs, if you can come up with ways in which you hopefully get your own land and expand so that businesses can come here and build sustainably by providing all the basic requirements of basics, i.e. water, electricity. And for that, I also recommend solar panels, wind, and other renewable sources so that we can see if we can lower the cost of a startup as much as possible, because our VCs don't have a lot of money. Therefore, we need to have scaled so small so that we are able to actually accommodate and sustain these startups. Thank you. Kansas City is, first of all, too large, and the investors who are actually there are taking forever to build. We haven't even seen anything of concrete action that a startup can go there and get started. So for me, I'd say if you guys can do, because about what, 5-10 million, you guys can get a very big piece of land here in Kenya, and you can put AfriLabs there, and we'll come join you guys, and we can help build your community there. Way better, because you can have more things to do there, like water. Instead of having to import water and all this, all that you can be done with storage tanks. You can harvest rainwater, and you can have boreholes in that land. Therefore, the cost of water goes almost to zero for any startup that comes to work with you there. If it's electricity, since you have the land, you guys can put solar panels from here to Timbuktu, or wherever your land is, and you can have energy as much as possible, including wind as well, which Kenya has a lot of. And since we are sunny throughout, our energy levels goes very low. And also comes to recycling also of food. with AfriLabs, I think you guys sooner or later will get guys who are innovating in the realms of food, like aquaponics and hydroponics. Bring them over and let them try that, so that if you want to make your coffee or you want to have some lunch, you can just go to one of your startups that are doing aquaponics and hydroponics, get a fish out of water, prepare us a meal after a good presentation like this, and would totally enjoy it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your intervention. You have suggestions for AfriLabs, and so they'll take that on. In terms of, local manufacturing and so on, just one thing that I want to mention is that if you look at the US or you look at Europe, those manufacturing plants are put in place with significant government intervention or incentives. And so, yeah, there too, and even there are some complex discussions between the companies and then the government, and then people say why you should do this and so on and so forth. So what I am trying to say is that everybody needs to work together, including the government, because these are, complex issues, and the way to find a solution to that, it's for all of us to work together. Just on one point, you talk about risk 5. I don't know why Intel is not there. I will ask, I'll ask since I hear it from you. It seems that you see some value, right, in what you've seen there. But what I want to mention, a number of those companies that you mentioned, we work with them globally. They use our technology to build some of the services that they provide. And so what I will understand is within the context of Africa, right? If you can even provide a little bit more information about what is that about, what is putting together, then I can take it internally and maybe understand actually, why that is not happening here. There might be several reasons, as you know, with big global companies, there are many other aspects to see. Thank you.
Great. So we unfortunately have to bring the formal session to a close, but we can definitely continue conversations over lunch. I'll shortly hand over to Dr. Bienvenu to give the vote of thanks. But I just wanted to thank the Baraza Media Lab team for hosting us here today. Baraza Media Lab are actually a member of AfriLabs, and we're proud to have them within our network. They've made the entire experience very seamless, and I hope that you have enjoyed your stay here, and we'll read more about them after this. And so with that, over to you to close.
Thank you very much, Nekesa. First of all, I would like to thank you for taking time to come and listen to us. I'd like to thank AfriLab for co-hosting this event with us. I'd like to thank all the participants that participated virtually, our Intel leaders as well, but also the Kenyan government as well. We have the cabinet secretary that was here. I'd also like to thank all the embassies that are here. We have German, the interim ambassador that was here. We have the U.S. Embassy also here, which means that this sector is very critical, right, to all of us, both as African or in Kenya, but also to our partners, right, global partners and so on and so forth. And so what I would say is that it's just at the start of the conversation, because what we try to do is to say, okay, here are what we have. We understand it might not meet your requirements. So let's have a conversation. We do the study. We understand what is happening. We want to get your input. We want to get your advice. And we're saying this, well, we want to see how Intel can support the deep tech startup ecosystem, but also what are the other avenues where Intel can partner or others can actually, come into this space and also complement what, Intel is doing and what AfriLab is doing. And so please reach out if you have any question, whether it's to myself or to Kate or to Raf or to Nekesa, right? Because, we're working together in our collaboration and so on. And if you have any question, any suggestion, any ideas, those are welcome. I thank you again, and I wish you have a great afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. Please have lunch, don't be shy.